welcome to the Red Barreled Podcast. We're up to episode 9. It keeps coming. It keeps coming. It keeps coming. There's no end to it. They
We're
say
like
there
Star
might be a number
Wars.
after 9. We'll find out next time.
Or like All Star by the
Smash
band.
Mouth.
By Smash
By
Mouth.
Smash Mouth.
Just
Is
keeps
that-
coming and the years keep
Oh, it
coming
just
and they
keeps
keep
going.
on coming and they keep on
thought it-
coming. And
I
they
wondered
keep
if you
on
had some
coming.
sort of association with the number 9.
No.
I'm not
not
as
that
much
smart.
a Shrekologist as you are. So.
Is that
So,
the QAnon number thing or?
Oh, maybe.
Because there's like a study of numbers that QAnon does as well, which is great. Where they're like, oh well, 4 + 5 equals this number, and that's actually the number of devils there are in the hells. And
For our
So-
German fans, this is going to sound like episode no, but we're going to work together to make it episode yes.
Oh,
Am I right, guys?
You've been workshopping that for weeks. I know it.
That's a burden. It's a real relief to get that off my chest.
First of all, let's do some introductions. I'm Alex, as always. And who else is there? We'll see which one of them accidentally talks over the other. Let's go.
Sophie.
One of you.
I'm
Is that
Sophie. Hello, I'm Sophie.
Okay,
Hi.
Sophie grabbed the initiative. And who
Yeah.
else is there?
It's
Who else
Ed.
is here?
It's me, Ed. Ed from,
Oh.
episodes 1 to 8 of the Red Barrels podcast.
Famously.
That's where I cut my teeth.
I've been saying this a bunch of times, but right off the bat, I want to say we want to get bigger. We want more people to hear us. We want to, convert the world to socialism through gaming. So please review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and any other podcast services that have reviewing functions. Please share us on social media and also tell your friends. Sophie and I, you might notice that our voices are a little less peaky today. They're a little bit less excitable, and that's because both of us hung over because we both happened to go to the same party for May Day to celebrate May Day yesterday. So that's what explaining that. And while we were there, we actually met someone who listened to the podcast. I think the first time it's happened to me, a real person in the real outside who listens. So thanks to you, person whose name I have already forgotten. Thank you
Wow.
so much. Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
the fame really got to your head, Alex.
Yeah. Do you remember that guy's
Yeah.
name, Sophie?
Neil?
Neil, maybe.
Neil?
I possibly never learned his name. It's possible that never happened.
I think it was Neil. It was
shout
Neil.
out
'Cause
Neil.
It was
To
the
Neil.
friend that I went with.
Yeah.
I think it was one of her friends.
There you go.
So
There you
it was
go.
Neil. Hi, Neil.
Neil,
I think.
he recognized our voices. Maybe not this time in the state we're in, but
Neil,
Thank
you are
you, Neil.
chronologically our number one fan.
number one. Well, so that's introductions. But you think we're going straight into the games? No, we have a brand new segment.
Oh, God.
Oh.
This time it's
good.
called Character Class Consciousness. So in this segment, we are going to discuss 2 video game characters and decide between us which of them is the most proletarian.
Okay.
Those characters this time are Amy Rose from the Sonic the Hedgehog games and Nathan Drake from the Uncharted games. Ed,
Ooh.
who is most proletarian? Go.
This is a good question. I mean, I know both of these characters, which is an improvement over Who Would Mark's Main.
I
That's
see
a really
Sophie
good question.
typing on the computer, which suggests she does not know those characters.
Nathan
I
Drake
didn't know
from
who Amy Rose
Uncharted,
was. I
Amy
know
Rose
Nathan
from
Drake.
Sonic's
Which like
long-time
my
girlfriend.
immediate response to that is like Nathan Drake I know is just a white man who has like money enough to do adventuring
Well,
and exploring.
He's a thief, so that's his job to go invent.
Yeah, but he is,
uses
you
the
know,
proceeds
Doesn't
of the adventuring to buy more adventuring.
If you're a
doesn't
thief,
make-
aren't you
does
like a
just because
member
he's a thief
of the...
doesn't mean he's inherently proletarian. Because I would
Yeah,
argue that
I'm not suggesting it.
I would argue that Elon Musk is a thief, essentially, right? In terms
it's
of
true. It's true.
exploiting the working class and taking that money for himself.
He's got
And then
certainly a
obviously
wage.
Amy Rose is a woman, which
Yeah.
already makes
Well,
her
I mean-
life more difficult.
I mean, she's a
Yeah.
hedgehog. She's a hedgehog.
She's a female hedgehog, though,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that we don't know that much about the political sort of hierarchies of Hedgehog World and Sonic, but I'm
Maybe you don't.
I'm sure
you
it's
don't.
not.
Maybe you haven't.
Well,
haven't
tell
looked
me
up
then.
The,
Okay, all
Sonic
right. Tell
wiki
me then.
like I
Are
have.
women as well off?
I want to hear
in
Ed's
Hedgehog
comment on Amy Rhodes versus Nathan Drake.
Okay.
Who is most working class?
I've been
Let's go.
thinking about it, and I'm going to say maybe Nathan Drake just based on the evidence that I've seen playing the games, I have seen Nathan Drake be working quite a bit. I've never
Oh, I
seen
see.
Amy be working. I've just seen her follow Sonic about. So
Mm.
I know that Nathan
Women be
works. I know he
following
does
men.
still stuff, but like,
Oh, she does. She does.
so but it's not like petty theft, is it? It's more like like plundering kind of thing. Like you're
Plundering.
I
still
feel like it's more like grand heist stuff, right? Which, like, I wouldn't necessarily characterize heist movie thieves as.
it's more like Indiana
proletariat.
Jones style stuff, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
I
so it's
mean, one could argue, I'm not necessarily, I'm being neutral on this at the moment, but
Okay.
one could argue that he plunders cultural treasures of various,
That's very
cultures.
colonial.
Yeah, and
That's
I
very
don't think
colonial of
Yeah.
him.
I don't
Yeah.
think he's I don't
But
think
he's not-
he
he's not as bad
personally
as
is
it-
like super rich. I don't think he funds his own expeditions. He gets he's got that other guy who gets the money for him, doesn't he? So I think
Yeah.
we see him working throughout the Uncharted games, even if it's a morally dubious job. Whereas Amy Rose, I've only ever seen like waving at Sonic and then like running over to Sonic, and then so as far as I know, she's
What if
like
Sonic? What if Amy does a lot of unpaid housework? We don't
she
know
may,
that.
but we've never seen that
Well,
either.
Unpaid and
may, but she's,
unappreciated housework, but we won't know that because she's not even close to being a main character.
Well,
You know?
Maybe.
well, she apparently appears in the teaser at the end of the Sonic 3 movie. And that's
Oh.
the big teaser. Spoilers. That's a big teaser
God.
for the inevitable
You
Sonic
ruined that
4.
movie for me, Alex. I
Sorry.
was so excited.
Sorry. But Amy, her whole deal is that Sonic rejects constant advances. So one could say she is playing pretty fast and loose with consent, frankly.
Oh,
Yeah.
hot
Yeah,
take.
I'm here to say it. Well, I'm going to tell you the actual answer to this because, yes, I've already determined
Mhm.
coming into this which is the most proletarian. And according to their various wikis, in Sonic Forces, well, I will say it's very difficult to find any clear idea of Amy Rose's employment.
Yeah.
However, in Sonic Forces, she is part of an actual resistance group
Oh.
to counter the Eggman Empire.
Oh, great.
Taking down
Oh.
Dr.
Oh.
Robotnik. Meanwhile,
Anti-imperialist.
Comrade Amy.
exactly. Meanwhile, in Uncharted 4, at the end of Uncharted 4, spoilers, Nathan Drake forms a salvage company. He forms
Oh.
a salvage company, which makes him petit bourgeois. So
Mhm.
officially, Amy Rose is the most proletarian out of the
What
two
did I
of
tell
them.
you?
Oh, well, thank you
Yeah.
for bringing that to my attention. I've not
Yeah.
played
win.
either Uncharted 4 or Sonic Forces, so I'm
Yeah.
happy to concede.
Add that
Solidarity
to your
for Amy Rose.
manifesto, listeners. Add that to your manifesto. That's important political knowledge you have just received.
Although I guess critical support to Amy Rose, given her sort of stalking of Sonic.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Good point. Okay, with that out of the way, we can finally move on to actually talking about games. And I think I'm going to be going first.
Oh my god, always taking the mic.
Yeah.
Always taking the mic.
I'm hogging it. But you can't stop me this time.
Hedgehogging
Be-
it. Sorry.
Yeah, true. Very true. I've been playing Blueprints.
Whoa.
So, Blueprints is a game that I am just now realizing I should quickly look up so I can get the developer and all that. Sorry.
Sorry, is it blueprints? Like, as in
well,
the things
we'll
that
get-
buildings are made of?
It's
We'll get that.
blueprints.
Not
We'll get
made
this,
of.
we'll get
You know what I
this.
mean?
It's describing a prince, as in the
It's
color blue.
it's blue. Yeah,
but
it's
it is a
prince.
pun.
Yes, it's a prince.
The
Prince
cowards.
is in the the son of a king, but the color blue. But it is a pun on the word blueprints with
That's
a
very
T.
clever.
Yeah. So this is a new kind of puzzle game. It's made by a developer called Dogu Bomb, which appears to, from my understanding and having seen the credits to this game, appears to be one of those kind of pseudo game studios where it's basically people all around the world who work from home and they collaborate on it, which is very cool. And specifically, the director of it is a guy called Tonda Ross. And this game has been getting some, frankly, bonkers buzz. It came out, I think, maybe a month or so ago at this point, and actually the beginning of April. And it immediately got ridiculous plaudits, people were saying, hands down, game of the year. I saw some people saying that. They were, saying it was a masterpiece, it was incredible. And I'm here to say it is pretty overrated. I was not that keen on it. Sorry, everyone. Sorry,
Yeah.
the internet. You got it wrong because I've got it right. So here's basically a rundown of what this is. This game, we talked about it last time, but has been described as another Metroidvania, a bit like Outer Worlds, which we talked about before.
Outer Worlds, was it, Alex?
Outer
Oh, you
Wilds?
got me! You got me!
Whoa.
Thank you for keeping me
Silly
honest.
Billy.
Goofy.
A bit like the Outer Wilds, and that means that it's a game that the real upgrades, although there are actual real upgrades that do happen in this game, but the main upgrades are just information that you find out about the world. So some people have kind of gone a bit crazy in the coverage of this, of how important spoilers are. They don't want to know a single thing about the game. And I will say, you don't really have to worry about that. The basic concepts of the game are explained in the first 10 minutes and are not ambiguous particularly. So I will be explaining what this game actually is about. So it's basically a form of puzzle game that has elements of roguelikes / lights. I think we're going to discuss that concept in a bit later. So the game starts off with like a little video about the fact that you are a character and your, I think, great uncle has died, and he owned this like huge lavish mansion, and he's leaving you the mansion and I don't know, maybe the attendant fortune or something in the will. However, there's like a stipulation that you will only properly inherit the mansion after you find the 46th room of this 45-room mansion. So that's mysterious, right?
But Alex, if there's 45 rooms, how can there be a 46th room?
Who can
How
say? Who
can
can
it
say?
be so?
This is merely the first of the many mysteries of the blueprints.
Mhm.
So the big kind of twist of this game is that the mansion itself is made up, again, it's of a grid of 5 by 9, so that's 45.
For all you math
And
fans out there,
yeah.
Shut up.
I'm not bragging. I did it. I did the maths.
did you do it on your
And
fingers like that you can with the 9 times table?
no, obviously I used a calculator on my phone. I don't think numbers, all right?
Can't think numbers.
um,
Can't conceive numbers.
yeah.
Foolish.
And every
What is
room is
number?
every room is in the shape of a square, and it starts off, you go at the bottom middle square at the entrance hall, and it's got 4 doors in it in the 3 directions you can go. And when you go to the door and click on it, you get an option of 3 rooms, because the play, other than the first room and basically the goal room at the other end, it's empty. So you actually build up the mansion as you go through it. You choose what room you want out of the 3 it offers, and this room, it'll have stuff inside, have some goodies maybe, or it will have some clues. It can have puzzle elements in it, and it will have doors in a various configuration. So basically, you slowly build up these rooms to work your way through the mansion. And as I said, there's another room at the end, which is called the antechamber, which is pretty obviously the goal that you're moving towards. And like it becomes very clear early on that room, while the antechamber is not the 46th room, it is key to finding it in some way.
Hmm.
And so there are a lot of kind of clever things about this. Like there'll be rooms that can affect other rooms. There's, for instance, well, firstly, I should say there are a number of kind of limitations on you rather than just moving forward. The most immediate one is that you start off with 50 steps. You lose a step every time you pass into another room. So the more you move around the mansion, the more you run out. And eventually, if you run out of steps, you have to leave for the day. And then the next day you start and the mansion is completely reset and you haven't brought any items from it.
Mhm.
There are also keys. Sometimes the doors are locked and you have to find keys that you can use to open them. There are specific rooms that you have to spend gems to actually place these rooms have like maybe are better in some way, have some magical properties, and you can just pick up gems as you go along. There's also money because there are some shops that you can buy things in. And it genuinely is a quite interesting way that like you can place these rooms and they affect stuff that's going on in other places. So one of the most basic ones is some of the rooms you get are bedrooms, and these bedrooms, by and large, they often have very kind of specific things, but they help recharge your steps. You get more steps, so you can remain for longer there. but there's one room that's called the nursery, and once you place that, that means that every bedroom you place, you get more steps. You get like 5 extra steps. So if you place that early and then you place more bedrooms going through it, then you get way more steps in the end of it. That's kind of just a basic kind of tactic you might use. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's a way more to it than I've even suggested there, and that is where the spoilers come in. There's as well as the actual mansion, there's like a grounds that you can explore and walk around, and there's some things in there, and a lot of the kind of wider exploration and the kind of meta puzzles within it are really interesting and cool. I'll say there is like one very elaborate puzzle that encompasses like every room in the entire house, and you have to kind of work out a bunch of stuff from that. At one point, there are some notes left around, and sometimes they have like hints in them. And one of them says that you should like suggest that you take notes and like physical notes. And I'm a big hater of note taking in games. I've always felt like it should just keep track of that information for me. I've always been a big anti that, but I've got to admit, I think this game kind of turned me around on that. I think it is worth taking notes, although that suggestion kind of a little patronizing. He suggests you might ideally do it in a journal so that you can be so cool with your little moleskin taking your little notes. No, I did it in my fucking notes app on my phone. Come on. Come on.
It's not the right experience, Alex. You should carve it into a stone tablet.
Maybe
Not very
That's the
dark
real
academia of you, you know?
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But as I said, usually I think you should keep track of it. But what is quite good in this is that you have no idea what's actually important. It's just based on you. So here's like a random example. There's it's one of the bedrooms that I mentioned. There's this little table that is in the shape of a hand pointing down. So the finger is basically the base of the table that it's all balancing on, and then the wrist is like the flat bed of the table. And it's very noticeable. And I look at it, what's going on with that? What's going on with that table? What's up with it? Now, I'll tell you, I got to the end of the game. Well, I'll get into the end of it in a sec, but I got to the credits. There's more game after that, and I've never found anything to do with that table. It could be that there is something to do with that table that I just haven't discovered yet, but it's quite notable. So would I mark that down? If I walked into the room and I got a little ding that says, "Oh, look at that weird hand table," I would immediately know that it actually was important. So I think they found the reason it's a good idea to take notes, I suppose. They got me. So all this stuff is pretty good. I mean, that's quite good and I've enjoyed it. My big problem with it, and it's what really, I don't know if it ruins the game for it, but it certainly knocks it off being game of the year or anything like that for me, is the random element of it. So as I said, when you select a room, you get given 3 of them to choose from, which is not a large number. And that means that very often, you will just get a bad draw on like a couple of them, and that ends your game and you have to leave. You haven't run out of steps. The pattern that the rooms took, just like, oh, it's now, there are no paths forward, and you just have to restart. There's nothing more you can do. And that happens a lot. And that's not too bad at the beginning, but towards the end, it gets very frustrating, frankly. So, for instance, for me, I finally got into the antechamber. You don't just have to get there. There's things you have to do, puzzles you have to solve to actually open it up. And I won't spoil too much of it, but I'll just say, when you get in there, there is an item, and you need to take that to another place, basically, to do something with it. And I had, by the first time I got there, which was like quite a big deal for me, I had happened to not build a route to that location that you need to take the item.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, shit, I've kind of got all the way. I've got all the way here. I have to make a route there, and I like gradually do it. And I frankly, I got pretty close. In fact, I got to that place you need to take it. Like, it's on the other side of this thing, but then I ran out of keys. There were no more keys. I'd used up all the keys. I was fucked. So I had to restart. So now I'm in a situation, and this happens over and over again, where I know what to do. I've basically solved the puzzle, But now I have to roll the dice over and over and over again until I happen to get one where the mansion just arranges itself in a way that is hospitable to me doing
Mm.
it. And that took like 2 days of playing to get
Really?
back to it. And I just got lucky. I could have not finished this game. I mean, partly I'm like, oh man, I'd really like to see the credits before I record the podcast so I can talk about it. But like, it could have screwed me over. I will say it's not quite as bad as that sounds. Almost every single run, you make some progress of some sort. You learn a new thing.
Even those ones that you were just describing, the ones after you've sort of found the way to the
Yeah,
antechamber?
yeah, because there's lots of mysteries in this game.
Mhm.
Even in those ones after I already found that got into the antechamber, I did find new rooms that I'd not placed before, and you get a little bit of lore for the rooms and they can affect things, stuff like that. But ultimately, none of it's that important because I already know the actual main thing I need to do, and I was just, I say, to be honest, I think if I hadn't had this podcast to talk about it, I probably would have considered just giving up there in frustration and going to
Mhm.
play something else. But I did get lucky last night, I think, or no, the night before, when I was playing it, and I saw the end. And the end itself, the credits itself are a bit underwhelming. Doesn't really explain much about the game or anything. But the big thing is that there is a great deal of stuff beyond the actual credits. There are deeper mysteries, and I say this is kind of the stuff I was maybe encountering a bit there. And all that stuff really genuinely seems interesting, and I would otherwise like to look into them. But the fact that I would have to do this random thing, I mean, a full run, if you get a decent way through it, it could take like half an hour.
Shit.
And then
That's a
you,
long time to have to redo over and over. Oh my
Mm.
god.
exactly, exactly. And it's just, I find it was just too frustrating. I don't really want to go back. Genuinely, I started watching a playthrough and I see someone who gets further than me. So I just can find out what those extra things were because I am interested, but it's just not worth it to me. I
When you
think,
say when you say mysteries, is
yeah,
this like plot stuff? Like, is the story
there
of
is,
this game
yeah.
something you're like like
Yeah, there is
engaged
a
with?
plot. There is a plot. So, quite often I say you can find notes in the rooms and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Some of them are, yeah, like basically outright hints or like tutorials even for playing the game. But others are about the plot. There's a whole plot about that you discover where it seems that you kind of realize that this house is actually in a fictional country and that this country appears to have been taken over by some sort of dictatorship or like absolute monarchy or something, and the monarchy is kind of red colored, and so as you being the blue prince, that's important in some way. But I've got to say, again, I saw the credits. I still don't really know the significance of that. There's like some interesting. Oh, there's like the family history of like your great uncle and all your family members and your mother and all the things in the game. So there is a bunch of stuff there. None of it really grabbed me that much. Again, I think if it didn't have this random fact, if I could just go and explore places and find out little clues and do stuff like that instead, I might be more interested in it. And maybe there are depths. I wouldn't surprise me if there are depths to it that are a lot more interesting. But I think just the random nature of the game just puts me off it.
How long did the game take from start to you getting to the credits?
About, I don't know, like 20 hours, something like that, 15 hours, around that. It's not a very long game. I mean, so at least to the credits. But like I think theoretically you could probably spend 3, 4 times that amount, like wringing out every bit of intrigue out of it.
Do you
But
feel like the
sorry.
sorry, I was gonna say, I guess, do you feel like the element of randomness is just sort of packaged together with roguelikes though, in
Yeah.
terms of like there is that sort of element of randomness which can determine the success of a run, you
Yeah.
know?
I mean, yeah, it's definitely part and parcel of the kind of genre, but
Mm,
usually most roguelikes have some sort of like combat or more kind of active gameplay, even if
mm,
it's like turn-based combat or something like that, which means that each run is quite entertaining of itself, right?
mm,
You usually in games like that, you kind of can get into a bit of a kind of a flow state, a kind of a I like, for instance, I played like probably hundreds of hours of a game called Rogue Legacy because I would just have it on in the background and I'd listen to podcasts. And that's just a perfect game. It's random every time, so there's a little bit enough difference for you to engage a little bit. But I'm just like plowing through all the rooms and just pretty much unthinking. This just doesn't really have that. It's not fun to walk around the rooms. Once you've seen the room, you know, most of the rooms you will see over and over again. So, you know, the novelty of seeing these rooms wears out very quickly.
Mm.
You know, you do again, most runs you will progress in some way. You'll find out a little bit of information here and there, but most of the time, actually playing the game is just quite boring. Okay, I need to walk through it. It's always this room again. I've seen it a million times. And like again, that example I gave of getting into the ante room, that's only one. There's just like hundreds of. You are constantly having a thing where you kind of come to a conclusion. Oh, this is how this works, and then you just cannot possibly test it out or implement it for many hours until again the rooms work out for you in a whatever way it happens to work out. Maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe if you're more sanguine about it, you can just like go with the flow, I guess. But I don't know, I found it quite frustrating. And to be honest, I think like a lot of the on the small level puzzles, like quite often it'll be like, oh, you need to open a box and it's got like a tile puzzle on it. Just it's not one of these, you know, meta puzzles or anything. It's just a basic puzzle. And
Mm.
most of those are not they're not great. They kind of range from being annoying to fine, I'd say. They aren't particularly interesting. So, yeah, I definitely do not think it's a game of the year
Do
by
you
any stretch of the
prefer
imagination.
this game or Outer Wilds?
I mean, Outer Wilds is dramatically better. I should say I'm a fan of again. We talked about it before these Metroid Brainias, quote unquote. You know, these kind of this is a first person game, so it's quite similar to games like Myst or The Witness.
Mm.
Now, I didn't really like Myst back in the day, but I love The Witness. I think it's a fantastic game, even if the guy who makes it, Jonathan Blow, is a massive knob. But I think it's great, and I enjoy. Again, I like the Outer Wilds. I love the idea of exploring an area and like solving prints and making connections between areas and things affecting each other and coming to wide realizations about what's going on. And I think there are a lot of games that do that a lot better. There's a game called Tunic, which has a
Mm.
lot of elements of that, and I love that game. I think it's phenomenal. So it was quite disappointing even on that level for me, and the random element just ruined it for me. I think. I should say there is a bit of a I don't know. I've tried trying to do a political a political analysis of this game is difficult because I have yet to uncover the entire story by quite a long way. But as I said, it does seem to involve this, you know, dictatorship that is red colored. And I do vaguely wonder if that has significance. I looked into the nationality of the guy, Tonda Ross, and he is American, even though I kind of wondered by his name from his name if he wasn't. So I may be thinking that like when they talk about like this these red people who are like obsessed, you know, they're obsessed about their maintaining control and stuff. Like maybe he's like it's a reference to Republicans in America and Trump, maybe because you know their color is red. There is like
Could also just be a Red Scare connection, I suppose.
That was my
it could
first
be
thought as
That
well.
was my first
maybe
thought. Yeah, I was
yeah.
like, oh, it
I
could be
I
red for communism.
I kind of it's just because the red regime is very clearly a monarchy, and there doesn't really appear to be an economic angle to any of that stuff within the game so far, anyway. But of course, you play a guy who owns a giant mansion, so you're
Mm.
hardly the proletariat there.
So
For the
no Amy
character,
Rose.
yeah, yeah, you know,
Miami
Amy Rose.
Rose.
So it's hard to say. I will say they're like part of the story is that there are these children's books, and the game makes clear that the children's books themselves have like are political allegories for again this dispute between the blue and red regimes.
Hmm.
So the idea that the game that it's in, therefore would also be a political allegory seems pretty likely to me.
Yeah.
But you'll probably have to wait for me to watch many hours of YouTube videos to
Mm.
find out the final elements of the story. But I think there may be something there. But as I said, it's not even by these like you know I would say Outer Worlds has a way more interesting story. For instance, just from what I've seen, maybe there are secret depths to it. But yeah, so I've got to say I was pretty disappointed. I was pretty hyped for it to be really good, but I don't know, I just kind of fail. There's some levels on which it is pretty good. I don't think there's any levels where it's like incredible by any stretch of the imagination, and the randomness elements really just turn me off from it.
Would you recommend playing it? Like, let's say me, I just for the sake of argument, I played Outer Wilds. I enjoyed
Yeah.
that game quite a bit, but I've not really had much experience with other Metroid Brainias.
I
Is this a good
believe
follow-up?
I could be wrong. Maybe I'll check. I believe it's on PlayStation Plus. So
Mm.
if you have a PlayStation, you have PlayStation Plus, it's quote unquote free. And give it a try, sure, why not? If you're in that instance, and I'm sure one day it'll turn up for cheap on Steam or something. A lot of people clearly like this game. It has got a big following, so
You
there's
think we'll be
clearly.
revisiting this in the Game Awards 2025 podcast coming in a few months' time?
I mean,
Mm.
genuinely, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, the other big game is that has it's kind of a thunder got stolen a bit by what's his name, Claire Obscure Expedition
Yeah.
33, which came out a week or two ago,
Mhm.
and everyone's now saying that's the hands down game of the year, and people have forgotten poor Blueprints. I'm probably going to play that next week, next episode, so we'll find out.
Well, that's a shame. It's never good when you play a game that you're really
Mm.
hyped about, and then it's just sort of like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
fine.
I mean,
It's yeah.
I
Go
think
ahead.
it's the fact that I could say maybe other people, and it seems that they do, can tolerate the randomness more than I can. In general, I'm not
Mhm.
that big a fan of roguelikes, and I have a low
Mm.
tolerance for randomness in games. But it's the fact that all the other stuff is just not as good as I'd hoped it would be.
Yeah.
As I said, I think The Witness is like a dramatically better game than this, I would say,
It's
as an
interesting
example of a
because
game that's pretty similar.
Blueprints was again very popular on Twitch. A lot of people were playing it.
Yeah.
Like quite significant streamers. Like I know Northern Line was playing it. Limmy was also playing it. Lots of people were playing Blueprints. So big, quite big streamers for those of you who don't know those two.
Yeah.
One of my streamer sort of friends as well, Little Bear, has also been extremely into it, like hyper focused on it.
Mm.
So I do kind of
Well, I'm
wonder
here
if
to
it kind
tell you,
of.
little bear, you're wrong.
Don't
Yeah.
say that.
Called out
Don't
by the
say
Red
that.
Barrels podcast.
I mean, even
Take
that,
no
because like
prisoner.
I do think it's like I do think it's I don't know when that element was randomness. I feel like that element of challenge. I feel like I guess it for me. It sounds to me like a type of challenge that some people like and some people don't. Like I don't. I don't particularly like randomness in video games either. I'm not a huge fan of puzzle games generally, though, to be honest, because I
Mm.
just find I find it quite frustrating when I can't figure things out fast enough, and I'm much more of a narrative person. I kind of just want to progress with the story. I don't really care that much about gameplay, especially in the case of puzzles. So I don't know. Yeah, it strikes me as like I guess I'm curious to know if it's an issue of like that you, as you mentioned, not being super fond of roguelikes generally. If it's more on that, or if it's like, or if people even within that genre really like it. I'd be curious about that.
It may be. Something I noticed. I mentioned that I didn't think the like individual small scale puzzles were that good. I remember I got to one of them, and because I was just so kind of pissed off with this randomness thing, this was like towards the end that I was mentioning. I was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna look this up on the internet. And then when I did look it up, I was like, oh, actually, that one was quite good, and I could have worked it out. I wish I hadn't, but I was so immediately, oh fuck this, I'm not doing another one of these stupid puzzles. It kind of just turned me against it when I like, yeah, just come up against a brick wall for no reason. I have not messed up in any real way. I guess
Mm,
maybe there are like super perfect, strategies you could take or
mm.
something, but
It's tough because, like, I remember a long time ago, a friend mentioned to me, and I couldn't agree more, that one thing that I think games, on the most part, need to avoid is making players retrace their steps. It's very,
yeah.
very unfun to retrace your steps in video games, generally. But obviously, now we have kind of entire genres that are about retracing your steps. A lot of puzzle games and a lot of
Yeah.
roguelikes in particular just sort of gamify retracing your steps.
Mm.
Um, but like obviously that I do think there needs to be a very specific that needs to be designed in a very specific way so that it's not frustrating. And I imagine that sort of randomness feels like, yeah, kind of placing the success of it on no skill of your own. It's kind of just like playing poker in that way, in terms of like, yeah, maybe you
Yeah.
could have a good poker face, but like if you've got shit cards, you've got shit cards, and if you put them down at the end, they're not very good, then like
Yeah.
you're still gonna lose, you know. It's funny,
Yeah.
someone mentioned it. Sorry, it came up in a podcast recently where someone was just like, "Oh, you know, it's the hand. It's not the hand you dealt. It's how you play them." It's like, no, it actually is the hand that you're dealt. Like that's how poker works. That is actually what matters in
Yeah.
poker is the hand that you're dealt. You can't really game your way out of shit cards. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was hoping after I quote unquote finished the game, saw the credits, and then it sets you right back at, every day it's a new day. I think I got up to like day 50 something. It took me 50 days, in-game days. And I've heard some people like got to the credits in like 20.
I
And
know
I'm
someone who
like,
spent
well,
120 days
yeah.
on it.
But I if they're 120 days, I imagine they're doing the deeper stuff
Yeah,
that
they're
goes
being
beyond the
really thorough
credits.
about
Yeah.
it. Yeah, which I
Yeah,
think,
and
I guess some people enjoyed that as well.
yeah, I mean, I'd say I was kind of like, you know what? I've had issues with this, but I am intrigued by the deeper stuff. And then what I was hoping was going to happen was that having seen the credits, you got me, I did it. It would like basically give me a kind of a mode where I can just like all the restrictions are gone. Like I don't have to worry about keys or gems or steps, and I can, I don't know, choose all the rooms from a list instead or
Mm.
something. And like, no, there's nothing like that. So I'm just immediately, well, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna like find, the mysteries are subtle enough that it's gonna be a tiny thing that I'm basically
Mm.
spending like 25 minutes, half an hour wandering around this thing for, and then it fails and I have to start again. And I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna do that. That's too far.
Feels like a shame. It feels
Yeah.
like maybe you weren't that far off from having an experience that you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this, but yeah, like Sophie's saying, I guess it's not for everyone.
Mm.
Not necessarily a problem with the game per se, but maybe just not compatible with our dear friend Alex over here.
Yeah, sadly not. Sadly not. The objectively correct opinion of the game, which is mine, wasn't a fan. But I think we'll probably move on to our next game, which is from Ed. What have you
Hello.
been playing?
I've been playing the 2022 roguelike / base building game Cult of the Lamb, developed by Massive Monster. I'm going to say right up top here, I played this on the Nintendo Switch, and if you plan to play this game, maybe don't play it on the Nintendo Switch
Yikes.
because it got very choppy quite a lot of the time. I know Sophie's
heard
also
this.
played this game. Was it
Yeah.
choppy when you were playing it?
I played it on PC, and not
Yes,
at
so
all. But I have
great.
heard that some people did have those complaints, though. Even on like fairly pretty well powered PCs,
Really?
did have some complaints
Interesting.
about.
I was assuming it
FPS,
was the fault of it being on the Switch, but
Yeah.
maybe not.
I
I'm not
didn't
sure.
have that problem, and I was on my old laptop, which like wasn't as good as my now computer, and I never
Mhm.
had that problem. But
Maybe try playing it on Sophie's old laptop if you can get
Yeah.
your hands on that.
Well, I hope it is better than 1,000 Times Resist, which was absolutely terrible on Switch. So,
Oh, yeah.
Switch 2 probably can't come soon enough, I think.
So in Cult of the Lamb, you play as a lamb, and
Huh.
you're not going to believe this.
Hold
the
on,
lamb
hold on.
Starts. Sorry, this is a huge spoiler. The lamb starts a cult. Ugh,
oh
I
my
can't believe you do that
god,
to me.
I
I
can't believe
know,
you
that's-
did that. You should have kept that to yourself.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
So at the start of the game, your little lamb friend is sacrificed to the 4 bishops of the old faith. But then upon dying, you meet the one who waits, who is a sort of being in chains, and they task you with freeing them. In order to do this, you need to start a cult, venture into the 4 different regions of the game to defeat each one of the bishops that sacrificed you, and defeating each bishop breaks one of the chains that has bound the one who waits. Great. Simple. Solid story.
Mm.
There's 2 basic elements to this game. There's the diving into one of the dungeons, or there's managing your cult. So obviously the dungeon part is the roguelike part, and the managing your cult part is the base building part. Each region of the game has sort of 4 dungeons you need to beat, and at the end of the 4th dungeon, you fight the bishop for that region, and then you can, move on to the next dungeon. I mean, you can do them in a variety of orders, but that's the sort of basic dungeon setup. So as I say, it's a roguelike. Each time you enter the dungeon will be randomly configured, but each region has some specific things that only turn up in that region. It's not like it's entirely random, and the randomness, it does extend to the weapons and the magic you'll be given at the start of the level. That's also randomized. You'll be randomly given one weapon and one of the kind of magic that you've unlocked when you enter the dungeon. Traveling through the dungeons, you'll find resources for building up your cult, and you'll find more people that you can animals that you can recruit to join your cult. You may also find other weapons or magic that you've already unlocked, and they'll always be a higher level than whatever you started with. So it's sort of incentivized that you take them. There are several different sort of kinds of weapon, like in terms of there's daggers and there's swords and there's axes, and they each handle a bit differently, have a different rhythm to how they play. And later in the game, well, quite early on actually, you could also unlock different sort of weapon effects. For example, one of my favorite was Vampiric, I think it was called.
I fucking love that one.
Yeah, which gives you a chance of healing whenever you deal damage.
No.
There are also lots of different types of magic spells. So there's like higher damage, single target spells, there's some good AoE spells or spells that can make an enemy attack other enemies, things like that. And each trip takes maybe about 10 minutes to get through from the beginning to the end, assuming you don't die. So then you come out, when you finish a dungeon run, you come out of the roguelike element and you find yourself in the base building element where you're managing your cult. You can build a variety of buildings as part of this, like increasingly nice places for your cult members to sleep, or buildings that cult members can be assigned to produce resources, like a lumber yard to gather wood, for example, or maybe like a place that cult members can be healed, things like that. While you're away, some of your actually all the time, some of your cult members will be worshipping at your statue, and this generates a currency called divine inspiration, which is kind of like the leveling system for the game. It's one of several progression systems, but this is the one that lets you unlock new building types. The other key progression system is at the temple that you have. Once a day, you can complete a sermon, and each of your followers gives you 1 sermon point per level that they are at. The followers level up mainly through talking to you and you inspiring them each day. So once you get enough sermon points, you can level up, and that unlocks things like new types of starting weapons or new strengths of starting weapons, and also different types of magic. So that's sort of the main way that you progress in strength for the roguelike element of the game. So yeah, the gameplay loop is go into a dungeon, try and get through it and defeat the mini boss at the end of each section, or maybe the bishop at the end of the 4 per region. And then you can unlock the next dungeon. You can get the resources while you're in there, get new cult members. Then you come back to the cult, use the resources you've gathered, and you can gather any resources your cult guys have got for you. That could be wood or stone or anything like that, or even advanced materials that you process from those things. You can get food, which you need to cook to keep the followers' hunger level up. You can then take divine inspiration from the statue because it can only store a limited amount, and use that to unlock new buildings. You need to talk to your followers to increase their levels, and you need to do sermons in the temple to unlock better equipment for your dungeon runs. So there's quite a lot of different things that you've got to sort of manage and keep on top of in order to sort of, play the way that it feels like it's intending you that you play. There's a lot of other elements that I'm not going to touch on, like there's tarot cards, which are powerful modifiers you can find in dungeons and which you can unlock in a variety of ways. There are other locations in the game outside of the dungeons and your cult area, like a sort of towns and things like that, which can include like some very like sort of small side quests. Like these aren't complicated things. There's also shops, and that's one of the places you can get tarot cards, for example. And there's also quite a fun little dice game called Knucklebone, which I quite enjoyed.
Knucklebones is a banger. Sorry, like as just a small side note, I usually fucking hate video games that have games within the games. Like I just don't like the games usually, and I hate it when games make me play them. So like a good example is Gwent in The Witcher.
I knew you were going to say Gwent.
I fucking hate Gwent. I never really played The Witcher, and one of the reasons is because of fucking Gwent, and I don't like
you have
it.
to play maybe one match. That it's just the introduction match. And
I hated it.
I also hated Gwent.
I hated it.
I did not play it. I think you possibly did not even have to play it that time. I was just like, well, I gotta give it a go.
Yeah, I think I gave it a go, and I was
like,
mad.
fuck that.
But Knucklebones is just so good. Like I feel like Knucklebones in particular. I don't know. I feel like I could say a lot about Knucklebones, just about how like well it's designed as a game within a game. It's extremely simple. It's very easy to understand. It's very easy to play, and it's not that disappointing when you lose. It's just very good game design with that little mini game. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I did like Knucklebones. I mean, that's all I'm going to mention it in my little summary of the game. But yeah, shout out to Knucklebones.
Shout out to Knucklebones.
Yeah. Basically, the game has got a lot in it. There's lots of ways to progress. It takes a little while to get into the rhythm of it all, or at least it did for me, and understand how it all fits together. But I really love the basic idea of combining a base building game with a roguelike. That seems great to me. That's very appealing to me. It's one of the reasons why I played it. However, here are where my criticisms of the game begin. I actually don't think the roguelike elements and the base building elements fit together all that well. Like, it's not awful. Like, it's not like they have no bearing on each other at all. And each individual part, like the roguelike part and the base building part, they're both quite fun. But I think they're just too distinct for my case. Like, yes, you can get some resources and dungeons for use in the base building bit. And yes, you can improve your starting weapons for the dungeons by leveling up in the base building part of the game. But that's kind of it as far as the integration goes. I feel like almost nothing that I do with my cult has any bearing at all on my ability to make it through the dungeons. Sermon points are the only things that help in the base building part you get further in the roguelike part. How do you get sermon points? I said earlier, you get it from, basically you fundamentally get it from keeping your followers alive long enough to go up some levels, although they do eventually die of old age. And then also by having as many followers as you can. So having lots of followers, yes, that is an output of going into dungeons, but you get maybe 1 or 2 per trip tops. But keeping your follower alive, that requires fairly minimal management. You've got to give them somewhere to sleep, give them food occasionally, and then like clean up the literal shit on the floor to stop them getting sick. Everything else that you do in the base building part of this game is just separate. It's just sort of for fun as far as I can
Oh,
see,
it's so weird.
which is not a problem exactly. Like, I still find both parts of it fun, but I was really thinking that it was going to be more tightly integrated, and I feel like that would be way more satisfying to me.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that it would work. You know, a lot of roguelikes have, I mean, frankly, the only ones I can tolerate have elements of like persistent, progression. So you're, you get some, I don't know, you do some stuff in the levels, in the dungeons or whatever, then you finally die, as you almost always do, but you get some points so you can increase your health or whatever. And I kind of assumed it would work that you find things in the dungeon that, like, I don't know, building materials or something, and then you take that to the base building and you use that in the base building, and then the base outputs some sort of benefit for you. Like, yeah, you get extra health from the bases or something that you
Yeah.
built with the
I mean, you
building
kind of
materials.
do in some ways. Obviously, you do find building materials while you're on a run. And then, like, I guess upgrading certain buildings, like I remember the kitchen. I know eventually you can sort of upgrade the kitchen to the point where, like, they can they can cook the stuff themselves and become self-sufficient. And I think also you can make better meals. You can collect better meals, collect better materials to make better meals, and then those meals can often give you bonuses, I think, on the run. Bonus health often, I think. And I think also there's that spirit mechanic. I don't remember what it was called, but where you can basically like convert a
Bring a
follower
follower
with you on a run. And I think you can get up to 3 if you level that
Yeah.
up high enough. And
Yeah.
like that, obviously, if you're nourishing particular followers for long enough, like I kept bringing high level followers back from the dead so that they could just live infinitely and keep leveling up.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, then they can turn into like some pretty quite assistive spirits, I thought.
It's just that all of the building
Mm.
stuff, in terms of you getting through the roguelike section, they only do that insofar as they keep followers alive for longer.
Mm.
And then that feeds into the sermon points thing to some extent. It's not very like precise. It doesn't feel like a very direct correlation between how well I'm doing in the base building
That's
feeds into the
fair.
roguelike bit, and how
That's
well I'm doing
fair.
in the roguelike bit improves my base building. And yeah, you do get resources in the dungeons, like I said, but the vast majority of resources you also can get from your cult generating them, like the wood and stone, the core things. Your cult can just generate that. There are some specific other ones that you can't generate, but still. And it just feels a bit strange to me, like given that you fundamentally beat the game, or you get the credits to roll by clearing dungeons to get to the bishops. Like, I rarely went into dungeons to get resources. I went into dungeons to beat a boss, and then I also picked up resources there. So for me, resources was sort of barely a consideration in the game. Like, they just sort of, I built stuff when I had enough resources, and it wasn't really a problem if I didn't. Like, you just sort of get them from playing. So there wasn't really a way that it felt like it tied together that well. It was just sort of like an incidental part of rogueliking, was that you could do a bit more base building, but not that much more. Yeah, it just feels like you could probably fairly efficiently get to the end of the game while doing almost no base building. That's my sort of takeaway from it. And that's kind of a shame, because I think the management system and all the building types and all the unlocks, that's kind of my favorite part of the game. Like you were saying, Sophie, like having little efficiencies in the base building thing, that's like kind of inherently satisfying to me. It's just a sort of improvement that doesn't actually feed into how good I am, like how able I am to finish the game. It feels strange. It's almost like a game within a game. It's like a separate thing which I'm sort of doing for fun, but doesn't really advance me in terms of beating Cult of the Lamb.
Hmm.
And I also would say the dungeon crawling experience, it's all right, but it's definitely less appealing to me than the management system. The combat, for example, especially later on in the game, it becomes very chaotic, and it's all about you just trying to avoid being hit by a bunch of stuff. And sometimes I couldn't even like keep track of where I am on the screen because dodging involves you rolling, and you roll quite a long way each time you roll. You're not seeing that much of a dungeon like on the screen at once. So I feel like I'm moving a significant percentage of the screen every time I'm trying to dodge stuff. So it just becomes a question of how chaotic is it going to be, and am I going to like happen to get hit or not? And the other criticism I have of the dungeon element of it is the health system. You have a really small number of hearts as your health, and that doesn't really increase over the course of the game in any kind of permanent way. But one hit doesn't always mean you lose one heart or half a heart or a quarter of a heart. You can't necessarily see what damage has been done in terms of your hearts. Like, it's to compare this to something else would be Zelda, where you might start that game with three hearts, and by the end of the game you might have got like 20 hearts. And if you take a really big hit, maybe you'll lose 8 hearts, and you can see on the health system how much damage you've done. And in this game, maybe you've got 3 hearts and you take a bunch of hits, and then eventually you lose half a heart. And that just meant that the damage was much less felt less real. It felt like really intangible. It was like I'd get hit a bunch, and then eventually a heart would go. So there was not really a direct link between the hits and me losing any health. So that, I think that made it feel a bit floaty to me and a bit sort of unsatisfying.
Yeah, I know what you mean. There are a couple of Zelda games where you can get like an eighth of a hit somehow, and it doesn't actually register on the heart thing, and it just like always feels weird. And making that
But
into
even
in
in
the whole
even in
game,
that,
it seems a bit much.
yeah, even in that, it's mainly like when you've got like quite good equipment or whatever, and you go back to some loser from the start of the game, and now you're so powerful that them hitting you, where it used to take a heart, and now it doesn't even register, and there's sort of a satisfaction to that. But when it's the whole game, I don't know. It just didn't really resonate. Like I said earlier, the dungeons, they can take about 10 minutes to clear if you don't die. The thing is, almost all of my deaths in the game were to the bosses at the end of those sections. So every time I died, it would be pretty much the full 10 minutes again to get back to the boss. That was fine earlier on, but later on when I was getting to a boss that I died to multiple times, it would begin to be frustrating. Not as frustrating as the half an hour experience you were just describing, Alex. But I mean, for comparison's sake, excuse me, let me look this up. In the previous episode of Red Barrel's podcast,
The Law Master at work.
Thank you. I was playing Demon's Souls, so I was playing both of these two games sort of at the same time, like alternating which one I was playing. And I thought it was very notable that I was getting more frustrated at deaths in Cult of the Lamb than in Demon's Souls, which was strange. I just really resented having to rebeat 10 minutes worth of quite easy content most of the time just to go back to the boss room. And because of the cult management's like loose relationship to how far I'd get through the dungeons, it didn't feel like I was making progress. It didn't feel like I was getting stronger each time or closer to winning it. It felt like I was just sort of wasting my time every time that I failed, and I had to spend 10 more minutes redoing already clear content, but like slightly reconfigured because of the randomizing element. Basically, what happened was, until I would get a specific configuration with a good combination of weapons, or maybe less chaotic enemies spawning, or fewer rooms needed to be cleared, then I wouldn't do it. So there'd be multiple times where I'd die again and again and again to the same boss, and then eventually I'd get a run through where I just wouldn't really take any damage, or like I'd beat the boss and have like lost half a heart or something like that. Which just it's not like I'd gotten loads better since the last time I did it 10 minutes ago. It just showed like to the extent to which the randomness was the key deciding factor on whether I'd make it or not. Like obviously a really good player could do it probably regardless of the setup. Maybe that's the difference between your experience in Blueprints, Alex, where it sounds like you just couldn't do it at all if you got the wrong set of rooms. In this game, like at least you probably could do it if you were actually really good at the game. But where I was with the game is there are some times where I could very easily do things that previously had been like very difficult for me. So I just didn't really hold together that well for me on that point of view. So look, I've just complained about the game quite a lot, but I didn't think it's a bad game by any means. I mean, I want to shout out specifically the aesthetic of the game. I really liked.
It's beautiful.
It's 2D. It's got this sort of QT aesthetic. and all your followers are cute little animals. And this combines really well, in my opinion, with the sort of horror, occult elements of the game. Like you might have to sacrifice your followers for various reasons throughout, and like having to sort of the darkness of you like betraying and murdering someone that follows you. Just this fits in really well with the cute little aesthetic.
Yeah,
Um,
I am. From my understanding, it's a little bit of a kind of a parody of, there's at least the base building section is a bit of a parody of like all these kind of what they call cozy games. Like the millions of games that rip off Stardew Valley and things like that. That are like, oh, you're just building up your little fun little guys, and you're just making them cozy little cafes to hang out in and stuff. And so the opposite of that would be their cute animals that you're building base that is designed to brutally sacrifice them.
yeah, the combination, I think, also let them do like more. Like the story was kind of more dark in itself than most games that I've played. You're
Mm,
essentially like dismantling sort of a church, I guess. Like you're
Mm.
killing you're working for a sort of devil coded character, the one who waits, and following his orders, you're killing a series of bishops. I mean, you sort of hear from the bishops and you hear what other people say about the bishops. So you it gives you the kind of sense that they probably do deserve it. It's not like they're good guys. Like they're sort of characterized mainly as like stuck up, like arrogant, maybe like conservative, set in their ways,
mm,
that kind of thing. And also, the game did open with them trying to kill you, so fuck them. But
yeah,
ultimately, you're definitely not the good guy in the game, right? Like you're
Mm.
working for the one
yeah.
who waits. It's definitely not presented as a morally good thing, but dismantling the clergy kind of is presented as like
Mm.
probably on balance a good thing
Well, yeah, just saying. Usually, when I murder bishops, usually they've got it coming. So that's something I found in Minecraft.
in a video game.
Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's not like your character is any better. Like you're not
Mm.
exactly liberating them on the path to communism, are you? You're ensnaring them into your own cult. Like
Exactly.
so,
Yeah.
and it does mean that this technically is an example of a piece of media where the one overturning the existing hierarchy is just as bad as those that they
Mm.
replace, which is like a genre that
Yeah,
I'm sure we've all a bit fed up with. But it really doesn't feel like that's what the game is trying to communicate. It feels like it's just having all the themes of the occult and dismantling the church hierarchy in a game with such a cute aesthetic. It feels like it's trying to be sort of. It feels like it's just having fun with itself.
Yeah, it
Um,
feels very lighthearted, and I love that about it. Like, I feel like the
yeah,
music as well kind of pairs very well with the game. It creates this very whimsical, sort of
absolutely.
spoopy is how I would describe it. Like the spoopy atmosphere of like it's just cute and dark and grim, but like it's mostly just cute, you know.
It's got a little twinkle in its eye.
It's got a little
I'm sure
twinkle in its eye. Yeah.
there are like there are people that could play this game, or maybe like let's say places where you could play this game where maybe
Mm,
it would not go down so well. Like,
mm,
I'm thinking like of the deep south of the United States, for example.
mm,
Probably don't love the idea of a lot of people there probably don't love the idea of you killing a series of bishops essentially working for the devil. But it does it with such a charm that it feels like it's sort of
mm.
daring you to be upset by it as you cut down another follower. It's like, oh, come on, you
Come
can't stay mad at
on,
me.
come on. You can bring him
Um,
back. You can bring him back from the
yeah,
dead.
exactly. So yeah, it's an example of a game where you're just as bad as the people that you replace, whatever, whatever. But it doesn't feel like it's trying to say, actually, have you considered that
Mm,
change might be bad? Like lots of those games, like it just feels like it's being fun and having like quite a unique
mm.
vibe as a part of that. And I do think it's more interesting for having that vibe. So I think if you like just played straightforwardly as a good guy, it would lose definitely part of that little twinkle. And yeah, Sophie, you mentioned the music. I loved the music in this game.
It's
I've added some of it to my
phenomenal.
Spotify playlist. Like
Yeah, I one
it's
of
such a bop, especially the
like
main one.
the work theme, like when you go in the camp and you like working, that's my alarm tone now because it like gets me in the mood.
Yeah,
Just like time to go do things.
it's great.
It's a
It's really,
phenomenal
really nice.
soundtrack. Yeah.
So, like I said, I've got a series of criticisms with the game, but the visuals are a lot of fun. There's a lot of charm in the game. The music's lovely. So even when I'm sort of having to redo a dungeon for the 10th time, well,
Mm,
normally not as many as that normally, but I'm not like hating. I'm not like angry with the game. It's still quite
mm,
charming, and there is a lot to do in the game. So you'll probably be finding something worth doing somewhere in the game. So yeah, I love the idea of the game, combining a base building and a roguelike. I don't think it was executed as well as it could have been. I think some relatively small tweaks would make me enjoy it a lot more, changing the health system a little, in general, tying the management system into your ability to survive more concretely. And like I said, the real benefits to survival, the real progress in terms of your survival comes from unlocking the 6 Mount of the Devout unlocks, which is part of the sermon point system. So it didn't so much feel as steadily getting better as it felt like 6 times you would just sort of leap forward in how good you are. That, like, it's a very different feeling. I would
Yeah,
prefer something where maybe it felt more granular in terms of how strong I was. Maybe it feels like my actions more organically feed into my strength in future runs. But yeah, I enjoyed the game overall, especially aesthetically, and it did only take me 12 hours, so it's not like I was burnt out. It didn't overstay its welcome.
Mhm.
I would be keen to see other people make a sort of roguelike base builder. Like, I'd like to play more of this kind of game, and I would also be interested to see what Massive Monster come out with next, because there is a lot of potential in this game. And I will also say a lot of other people seem to have really enjoyed it. Obviously, Sophie here, but
Yeah.
it was also nominated for a Game of the Year award at the BAFTAs and stuff like that. So even though I've got my issues with it, like, it might be worth checking out anyway. Your mileage will probably vary.
Yeah, my
But yeah.
understanding is it is done extremely well financially. Like, I believe, like, Devolver Digital, who published it, they were, I think,
Yeah.
I could be wrong about this, but my memory is that they were in, like, some financial trouble, and Cult of the Lamb kind of saved them, basically. So it certainly seems to have been popular, and I mean, sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I was just saying that, like, I remember when I saw it when it came out, it looked kind of cool, but I didn't give it a go for whatever reason, and I was just surprised that, yeah, it just kept turning up at things and getting mentioned at stuff. So it definitely had. I think there's been like a couple of expansions or something that
Yeah.
got announced since then. But yeah, so my point being is that, yeah, it's got a real kind of
I think
audience.
it's all free DLC, actually. I think the
Cult
expansions are all free
following.
DLC.
Ooh.
I think. It does have a cult following,
Free,
yeah.
yeah.
So I think there's also something to be said about how there's quite a lot of fresh content for free, despite you paying
Yeah.
the base price. That's really nice. They keep it quite fresh. Like now, if you play it now, I played it like a couple years ago, and I feel like it's quite a different game now in terms of, like, there's a lot more sort of like quirky things in the base building and stuff than there was when I first played it. I did want to talk a little bit about, again, this game and Twitch, because we talked a little about this before the pod, but this game in particular was also quite popular on Twitch, and for one very particular reason, which is that it has a Twitch integration, which means that there's a sort of like seamless feature that connects Twitch and how your chat works to how the game works. So basically, one of the Twitch integrations that was really, really just very fun for streaming was that you could basically your chatters could enter a raffle using a Twitch extension to be randomly selected as the next follower whenever you recruit a follower. And they can't do they can do a couple of things. They can't control that character, but honestly, just having like a little follower with your chatter's name walking around, they can customize the follower as well, so they could choose the type of animal they want and the color and stuff. And it's very, very cute. It's a nice way to incentivize people sort of participating in the stream. For like a technical standpoint. And it's also just very charming. And I think also there are a couple of redeems that you can have, channel redeems, where you can send a message as your follower, which doesn't work super well, but it is quite cute when, like, you have chatter who says, like, you stink, and then a character comes up to you and is like, hey, I have something to tell you, and it's like, you stink, and it's quite cute and charming. I
I
did
can't
like
believe
this
they'd
game a
attack
lot.
you like that, Sophie.
Yeah, I know. They're so mean to me. But yeah, so I did like this game a lot. And I think maybe my vision of it is very colored by streaming. I think probably a lot of people who streamed it would have a different experience of it playing it independently. It is so fun on stream. It is so charming. And like, obviously, all of these, I do think that I definitely enjoyed the base building more than the roguelike
Yeah.
for sure. And that's a lot of the reason for that for me was because a lot of the interaction with chat was happening back at the base, where you'd come back to base and you'd have one of your essentially followers who's named after one of your chatters being like, hey, I would really like to eat a bowl of poop. And it's like, oh, that's
Yeah.
disgusting, chatter. What's wrong with you? And it's just this really fun way to dogpile on chatters. And they kind of added a lot more sort of interaction between the followers with a couple of the free DLC. Like, they can get into relationships with each other and they can hate each other, these kinds of things. And that's also that was really effective on Twitch, where it's like, oh no,
Oh yeah.
this chatter and that chatter hate each other now, or stuff like that. So that was a very additional layer of charm, which made all of these decisions a little bit harder when it came to like who do we sacrifice? Which one of you are we going to sacrifice? And then you'd have loads of people who are like, me, 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 which is really cute and charming. And I think that's my favorite thing about the game. I think charm is probably the best way to describe it. I do think it's just extremely charming. I completely agree with you on a lot of the things that you said about how a lot of the gameplay could have been improved with some minor tweaks, where it's like, I do also agree that the base building for me was a bit more fun and not necessarily super linked to the runs. But I did enjoy it overall. I do agree that I think my main takeaway is like, I would love to see more of this. I would love to see more of this style of integration. It's just a very fun combination, and I like it. I think for me as well, I don't play a lot of roguelikes. I played a little bit of Hades, and I kind of struggled to get into it. It's just really I bounced off of it. I appreciate that it's a good game, but I bounced off of it for some reason. And I think Cult of the Lamb kind of gave me a nice opportunity to sort of take breaks from the frustration of runs and the constant sort of going back and forth and failing, because that's kind of the nature of a roguelike, is the constant failure. It was kind of a nice way to go back and just take a break and do some other things that were like kind of soothing and fun and silly for a little while before you have to go back into the fray. Whereas other games, I think that frustration, that failure is the meat of the game. You kind of just have to keep doing it. So I really enjoyed that as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I think that's Cult of the Lamb then.
Well, I just want to say, I think my number one takeaway from your little review there, Ed, is that you're really pleased that the Pope has died.
Yeah.
I was thinking about making a reference to that too.
Yeah. You're just like, you heard that
Woke
and you were just
Pope.
like, yeah, poof,
Woke Pope.
take him out, had it coming. Yeah, we know how much you hate the Catholic Church and all
Rip woke
bishops
Pope.
and all cardinals. You watched a conclave and you just had finger guns at the screen the whole time.
I watched that debate with like Christopher Hitchens, Stephen Fry, and Anne Widdecombe and someone else, and that really convinced me.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a deep cut. That's a deep reference to some random thing on YouTube from like 20 years
I know
ago.
exactly what you're talking about.
I thought you
I
might.
know, I remember.
Yeah. I had an AG atheist phase in high school.
Oh, who didn't? Who didn't?
Yeah, who didn't?
As did
And
many,
I feel like that's, more acceptable than like the edgy incel phase that people are having nowadays. So it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
like,
maybe that speaks to our age.
Yeah,
though,
I
to
mean,
some extent. There, but for the grace of God.
Richard Dawkins is very bad, but
yes.
probably better than what's his name, Tate.
I think
Andy Tate.
I think that's a
Yeah, Andrew
dangerous
Tate, Andrew
comparison,
Tate.
Gay. I think we could just put them both in a category of shit.
Yeah,
and
hey,
it's fine.
I'm not liking either of them. I'm not liking either of them.
Alex
Mhm.
supports Richard Dawkins.
Oh no,
Loves
That's your main
Dawkins.
takeaway.
they got
Richard
me.
Dawkins is a
me.
better role model than Andrew Tate, is what you just said. Yeah.
Well, this is where I spread my edgy political opinions. So
It turns out
Well,
we're
I guess
still
Andrew
edgy
Tate-
atheists.
Andrew Tate kind of leads a cult of the lamb, doesn't he? Where lamb
He
is
does,
like
yeah,
young people.
yeah.
yeah, it's very true, very
So
true.
I know that ties it all together.
Oh man,
Mm.
full circle. That's why you're a podcast pro. Ed.
I
Thank
also
you,
do
yes.
think it's like a very, again, like a lovely, goofy interpretation of the obsession people have with cults, because obviously there is like a pop culture obsession with cults. And I think that's just so
Yeah.
cute and goofy. Like, you could tell this idea just came out of like, what if we made a game about a cult, but it was like really silly and cute, Instead of like, I don't know, that one Far Cry game, which was like, what about if we do it like very serious faced? And
Yeah.
it was like,
yeah,
yeah,
that was very interesting.
Yeah. It's good.
I wish I could join a cult, but none of them would have me.
Aw.
Why not?
Let's not get into that on the pod. But yeah, cool.
You
So
hate-
I used to
The
live around the
Pope.
corner from a cult.
So
That's
Really?
a real cult.
Ah.
It's called the Jesus Army.
Huh. What is your address?
That's a
Oh.
crazy name of a cult.
Yeah. It's called
That's
it was called
crazy.
the Jesus Army, and I mean they put themselves out as, hey, we're just like a Christian sect. We all live in the same big house together. They like
Normal
literally they had a couple of like it's a terrace of houses down there, and they owned like two or three houses in a row, and they apparently knocked through to them inside. And
Oh yeah.
the main issue I had with them is that they took up all the parking. They had all these little vans, and it spread. The issues spread around here.
That's
And
the
then
stuff you don't hear about on normal
Yeah.
anti-cult
It's true,
content.
it's
The
true.
parking.
they had a whole bus. Though they parked the bus somewhere else, but you could see it sometimes. But
Well-
Yeah, the Jesus Army minibus.
yeah.
While you were
In-
talking, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it wasn't a minibus. It was an actual bus, like a
Oh.
full-size Route
Proper
Master
bus.
bus. Yeah.
Well, Wikipedia's missing that.
In less fun news, it came out like a year ago or maybe
Oh.
6 months ago that they'd done a terrible sexual abuse. So
Oh,
Oh,
of
that's
course.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind
they
of
are a
that's
cult.
kind of
yeah.
par for course for every cult, to be honest. Yeah, you kind of while you were speaking as well. Sorry, again about Cult of the Lamb. Something else I really like about the aesthetic. Sorry, but I just while you were talking, I mean, I'm sure we would. I don't know about you guys, but like I received like a satanic panic talk while I was at school,
Oh,
and I think a lot of
wow.
people
Did
our
you?
age did. Yeah.
No,
I didn't
we-
get that.
I definitely didn't.
We
get
had
that.
quite a significant satanic panic moment in South Africa in like the 2000s, like the
Oh, really?
2005 to sort of 2007 was quite a significant satanic panic. And that's quite common, I think, in very evangelical sort of orthodox Christian societies like white South Africa specifically, and also obviously the States had its own satanic panic, and Canada as well had a very
Yeah,
significant
yeah.
satanic panic in the 90s. I'm very interested in satanic panic specifically, like obviously as a tool for like identifying other sort of
Mhm.
rhetorical movements, but also just like is it specifically the idea of like, oh, they're Satan worshippers and they're doing the most evil things you could possibly imagine, which like the imagination of the people claiming these evil things are happening is often more shocking than like what I imagine anyone is up to, where it's like, I don't know why you're spending this much time imagining people like sacrificing children in a cult. Like that's crazy that you're thinking about this that much. And I do kind of love that the aesthetic of Cult of the Lamb is kind of like, yeah, we're like sacrificing things and we're like drinking blood and eating poo, and it's all just really goofy and silly though, where it's just like we're doing all the most evil things you could possibly imagine. We're so evil, and there's pentagrams everywhere, and obviously you work for Satan and you sacrifice things for Satan. But again, it's all just kind of cute and silly, and I just really love that sort of turning on its head. I think it's really fun. I also did once someone tried to recruit me to a Japanese cult when I was
Ooh.
when I was an English
They've
teacher.
got some good ones over there.
They
Wait,
do have some
I
lovely.
didn't know you used to live in Japan.
Yes, I did used to live in Japan. This is
I feel like
actually while I
that's
was
not helpful.
outside of Japan, actually, because when I worked as an online English teacher, I had a student who tried to recruit me to Happy Science, which I think some people have
Ooh.
probably heard of because there's an anime about it.
Oh, that one.
Yeah, as in,
Oh, is
like,
that,
a
are they the ones that?
promotional
They did their own anime. Yeah,
they did their own
I have
promotional
heard of
anime,
that,
and he tried to recruit me to his cult, and it was really
Wow.
weird.
Should learn from that Jesus Army.
Learn from that
yeah. Your own
Jesus Army.
anime.
Like if you're not willing to like pay money for English lessons so that you can then convince your English teacher to join a cult, I don't think you're doing recruiting good enough. Let me tell you.
Well, maybe next time. I'm sure both you and us two are prime targets for Happy Science to this day.
Can't wait.
But I think that's probably going to be it for Cult of the Lamb, unless you got anything more.
Nope. Sorry, I'm just reading about these cults now. Happy Science advertised spiritual vaccines during
Yes.
COVID.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
The Japanese cults have done a lot worse than that. So famously,
They're up to some wild shit.
yeah. But yeah, I think we
yes.
should maybe move on to the news.
Let's move on to the news.
For those of you wondering, I'm not going to be presenting a game this week, listener,
Oh, yeah,
because
sadly,
I don't know if we mentioned this, but I haven't had time to play games. I've had a lot of uni work. So instead, I contributed a lot to the Cult of Land section, so you're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thank you. Your
welcome.
contributions are wonderful in whatever form they come.
Thank you.
And this is going to be the news. The news is coming. This is the news.
Nice.
And the first up, it's going to be me again.
Oh,
With
for God's sake.
some genuinely quite bad news. Tends to happen.
Evil laughter.
Tends to happen. So, in the space of about 24 hours, two massive rocks basically hit two titans of the games media. And those were one, that Fandom, the company that owns Giant Bomb, pretty much has confirmed that they're going to. I think the ideas that Giant Bomb, we'll get into it, but Giant Bomb will exist in some form, perhaps, but it's going to be completely decimated. Most of the people have either been fired or quit. And then mere hours later, it was announced that Polygon, the well-known games website, has been sold to a company called Valnet, and the vast majority of the staff have been laid off. Again, it seems like Polygon will maybe still exist in some form, but wildly reduced. So let's kind of go through these. So a while back, Fandom, the company I believe they bought GameSpot, the wider company, which I believe is staying relatively the same that under current plans, although it's probably got a bit worse recently in general. And Giant Bomb, ironically, Giant Bomb was originally set up by a few guys who left specifically GameSpot because they were being forced to, I think they wanted to do a review of the game Kane and Lynch 2, and they wanted to give it a bad review. They didn't think it was good, and the site had giant Kane and Lynch adverts all over it at the time, and basically the management said they weren't allowed to do that, and so they left en masse. And this kind of garnered them a lot of cred, and they started podcasts and have been very famous. Now, a while ago, I think maybe it was when it got bought by Fandom. I can't remember, but most of the original guys left. A bunch of them started their own Twitch channel called Nextlander, and Jeff Gerstmann, who was famously there, just started his own Twitch channel. But Dan Reichert, who was one of the classic guys, though not one of the original ones, but rejoined and kind of gave it a lot more legitimacy, and it was getting quite popular again. And it seems that Fandom have just decided to end all that. Fandom are a pretty bad company who I believe they owned, or I don't know if they started it, but anyway, they basically run Wikia, which is the company that runs a bunch of kind of nerd wikis. So, for instance, earlier on today, when I was talking about Amy Rose and Nathan Drake, I got all that primo information from the Sonic and Uncharted wikis that Fandom runs, respectively. And if you try using any of those sites, they're fucking terrible. They're just like covered in like auto playing video ads. They're just incredibly obtrusive. They're very unstable. So it's just a great example of a company that is just absolutely kind of desperate to wring every penny that they possibly can out of the things they own while reducing the quality. And it seems that they probably bought Giant Bomb in the first place because Giant Bomb has its own kind of giant database that I believe is largely fan made of like all these games. It's very extensive, and they probably just want to integrate that into Fandom. And what remains of Giant Bomb is going to be unclear. Almost everyone who was notable there no longer appears to be involved with it. And I believe they put out a tweet that basically said it's currently on hiatus, but it will come back in some manner. So no one's terribly excited for that. It seems that, I mean, already the original Giant Bomb was arguably dead. Now the new Giant Bomb that, some was getting a good following, it seems like that's now dead. Maybe some kind of much worse version of Giant Bomb will resume. Ed.
I didn't know that Fandom. I've seen that name from all the times I go on nerd wikis, which
Yeah.
I do disturbingly often. I've got to look that stuff up somewhere.
Yeah, it's a vice that many of us fall into looking at those.
Exactly. I didn't realize. I guess I'd never really thought about it. I thought it was a spin-off of Wikipedia in some way.
I thought it was like user started for some reason, I guess. Like
Yeah.
I think a lot of them did. I think Wikipedia, the Star Wars one, and Memory Alpha, which is the Star Trek one. I think maybe Memory Alpha, maybe Wikipedia. I think they've actually split off because Fandom is so bad and they've restarted themselves under new management. I think there were a number of kind of fan wikis that were just set up separately, and then Fandom, maybe seemingly benevolently at the time, came and kind of hoovered a bunch of them up and combined them. And, I'm sure there were some benefits to the infrastructure that they gave. And then I think they just then started basically wikis in pretty much any vaguely nerdy thing that exists that could possibly have a wiki. I can't remember any of the top of my head, but I have seen some very, very kind of low level things that you would not believe have a wiki dedicated to them. Do in fact have one through that.
I've started a wiki.
Oh, have you started a wiki?
Yeah, I started a wiki a long time ago with a friend because I used to collect when I lived in Japan. I used to collect
I've heard. Wait, you lived in Japan?
I lived in Japan, actually for 2 years,
amazing.
And I used to collect stamps because they have stamps at like train stations and
I've
tourist spots.
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And I have like 3 to 4 little notebooks full of stamps. And me and a friend of mine started a wiki for like each station stamp. It was kind of like a joke where like we had like a ranking of like quality of ink, difficulty to find, and then like kind of a little description about the stamp with a
Well,
photo.
that seems more mainstream than some of the actual wikis. So you could probably make a pretty
We only
penny
had
selling
5
that to
pages, I
fandom.
think, so.
Yeah, now
Um,
that you mention it, I think because obviously I did on hold
Oh,
on episode 7
Oh!
of this, the Red Barrels podcast, I did Vampire Survivor. So I've been playing Vampire Survivor.
Hmm.
I've been playing that
Oh
from
yeah,
like the start of the year.
I've used that wiki. Yeah, I've used that wiki.
Apparently, that's one that has recently escaped
Oh really?
the clutches of fandom
Yeah.
and now it's its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about
that does
Stardew
explain.
Valley?
I thought
'Cause
I
I
was.
feel like Stardew Valley's got to have a massively well-used wiki as well,
Yeah.
right? Although I
Yeah.
now have a mod, which I think, like, I don't know how the mod works, but it makes it so that you can look up things in-game without having to go to a separate Wikipedia page.
Oh, I
I
see.
wonder if that
Mhm.
I wonder if it feeds information from the wiki into the game or something like that.
Maybe. I mean, this is in general part of the trend, or a trend that's been going for quite a long time, of basically the way you promote a website is that you want it to get high up on Google Trends, Google results. And the way you do that, I used to, back in the before times, I used to do some of this for a living, which was basically used to do something called SEO, which was search engine optimization, where there were a bunch of like little tips and tricks that you could organize your website in some way to basically trick Google into ranking it higher. And then at some point, that basically became a completely losing game and everyone gave up on it. And that was replaced with what's called content marketing. So that means that you basically on your website, you have like articles and things that people will genuinely want to link to. So that means that you game your way up the Google rankings, like the quote unquote correct way, because Google decides who's the most reliable source by how many links they receive to it. So, for instance, once upon a time I worked at the BBC, and the BBC just had easy 100%. We could put out anything; it would just rocket to the top of the Google rankings because the BBC is like an internationally famous, huge organization, and people link to it like every day, over and over again. So that was incredibly high, and like other companies try and do that. And the way a lot of these games media companies have done that is through guides. So they all run extensive guides for every game so that you can search for every game and like these specific puzzles or whatever. Like, for instance, the blueprints. I'd say I looked up some puzzles on there and they have an individual page made by multiple websites. And that's all there to game up the Google ranking. And that's basically what fandom's business model is. They have thousands of pages over all these wikis that people can link to. And they also bought, as part of with GameSpot and Giant Bomb, they bought, I believe, Game FAQs, the old site from from going back to the 90s that was going, that just fan-made game guides, which are quite rarely set up these days because so many of these commercial sites have their own guides for SEO.
Sounds vaguely parasitic.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't know. That sucks about Giant Bomb and Polygon though.
Yeah.
I like both of those websites. So
Well, that's the other half is what happened to Polygon. So this is kind of crazy. So Polygon, a site it was started in 2012, is a relatively, to be honest, it wasn't my personal favorite, but there's a lot of good writers have been on there. They had pretty decent like articles and so on. They also pivoted to doing guides and stuff for the same reasons I was putting out, but they still had decent content on there. Famously, when they started in 2012, they had put out this video series of videos about the making of Polygon, which was the most absurdly self-serving thing. It basically made out that like they were like heroes who were going to save the world with game journalism, and it was widely mocked.
whereas we're the real heroes
Yeah.
who are gonna
We
save the
are,
world talking
yeah.
about
I mean,
games.
it was very kind of a tech world angle that, was like, man, this is like genuinely a
Mhm.
public good, what we're doing.
Gross.
But, they've done a lot. I mean, that was a long time ago, and they've done lots of great work since then. However, they are owned by Vox. They were started by Vox, a company. They do Vox.com. They do news. And also, they've been associated with Ezra Klein and is the other guy in America who are kind of trying to be pushing themselves as like the alternative. So where liberalism has failed and they don't want like Bernie and AOC style leftism taking over the Democratic Party, they're presenting the other one, which is basically they're going to be against regulations so that high-speed rail can be built, and that's about it. And it's pretty pathetic as a movement, but those guys are all from Vox, and so there is a kind of a beating kind of a neoliberalism at the heart of Vox, which I guess came out in force today when they basically, or yesterday even, when they sold Polygon to a different company called Valnet. Now, I believe there's been talk about Polygon probably getting sold for a while, and there were other possibilities they could have been sold to. Valnet is basically the absolute worst possible people they could have been sold to. They run a number of other websites such as Collider, Comic Book Resources, and Screen Rant, and they put out the absolute dreck kind of a clickbaity slop that no one likes. I'm sure, frankly,
Right.
I don't know this, I haven't checked this, but I'd be basically surprised if they haven't used AI for a decent amount of it. It's very low quality. I will read to you one of the craziest paragraphs on Wikipedia on the Valnet entry. And I will say I've gone through the sources and checked them, and I mean, at the very least, vaguely reputable sources have reported this. So that this is what it goes. Okay. This is the first paragraph on history of Valnet. Foosball players, table football players, foosball player students Matt Kiza, Stephanie Manos, Sam and Hassan Youssef started a business in online pornography in 2003, growing their successful enterprise under the Brazzers name. Kiza began Pornhub under the company Interhub, separately from Brazzers, and the businesses remained silent partners until Interhub was found to be hosting videos of the rape of an underage girl, and federal investigators of the U.S. Secret Service's Organized Fraud Task Force seized millions of dollars from Brazzers' parent company and Mansef's bank accounts, discovering millions in wire-transferred money from Israel. This
Oh my God.
resulted in a sale of all the founders' pornography assets, while the Youssef brothers took time off from business until they eventually founded Valnet in August 2012.
Yikes.
What the fuck?
Oh my God. It just
Jesus Christ.
So I guess, to be fair,
it just continued getting bad. Not necessarily worse, but like it was just oh my God.
That
So
was a
to be
real
fair,
tour
these
of
two
shit,
these
wasn't it?
these two
my
brothers
God.
Have a claim
Yeah.
of shit.
These two brothers have, I guess, divested themselves from all pornography for over a decade now. So I don't know. Maybe they're reformed characters.
It's also like this is not at all anywhere near the most relevant thing there, but isn't it weird running a porn site with your brother? That feels weird to me.
That's
I don't know.
weird. Don't do
That's
that.
weird.
Don't do that.
I don't know that.
Obviously, not the main
Not the
thing that was wrong with
vibe.
that.
Not the vibe.
Christ.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem like they're great guys, to put it mildly.
No.
The word is that Valnet treat
Good
their
at foosball though.
yeah, good. I'm sure they're great
So,
at table football. Yeah, tried to look
Every
into
cloud.
this. I tried to look into it. It just says foosball player students, and I was like, what the
Yeah.
fuck does that mean? They played
The fuck does
foosball
that
sometimes. Are they like professional foosball players? In what way?
I mean, there are professional foosball players. They do exist.
As I said, I looked into it, and literally the source literally says exactly the same thing. It literally just describes them as foosball players and nothing else.
Crazy.
So I don't know in what way they played foosball. Yeah,
Probably unethically.
I'd
just
assume
judging
so.
by
Yeah,
everything else.
it seems that way. So anyway,
Probably
after
in the
that,
creepiest way possible, with like really, really short shorts and putting their leg up on the table. You know what I mean?
yeah. It's definitely very aggressively.
Yeah.
In the bad way. You know, I guess you could be like aggressive in a good way playing foosball. You know, it means you're like got burning passion for it or something. But they're like
like
bad way.
Shirley from Community.
Yes.
Mm,
Oh yeah, that was
That's a good reference.
That's
That's
an
a good
extended
character.
joke you're
Thanks.
making. I'd forgotten the episode. Yeah.
it's a good reference. I like that.
Yeah, so basically, at some point they started buying up a bunch of these, as Valnet started buying up a bunch of these kind of media, kind of nerdy media websites, and now they've come for Polygon. And word is that apparently they pay incredibly badly. They treat their employees incredibly badly. It's worth pointing out that Vox actually has a union, like a quite good union. They were
Mm.
one of the first, if not the first kind of media union to be founded in America in like decades, which was pretty impressive. But I guess it wasn't able to stop the entire sale of the company to these awful people. Yeah, so, and I should say that also, in a nice move, I saw that IWGB Game Workers put out a statement about this, basically
Mm.
offering commiserations and saying that, if more places were unionized, this kind of thing might be a lot less possible. While from my understanding, those unions did great work in getting better pay and conditions for the people who work there, you know, they can't do everything, at least until there's far more extensive
Mm.
unions in many industries. So unfortunately, something like this can still happen. But yeah, this is all, very bad news. It's we mainly been talking about bad stuff happening in the main video games industry, but the games media industry has been going through a very bad time as well, maybe worse.
Excuse
arguably.
my ignorance on this, Alex,
Hmm.
but if the people from Polygon are unionized, does that Vox are unionized? Does that necessarily mean that people in the subsidiary companies they work for are unionized? Do we know that people?
Polygon,
people
yes.
at Polygon.
People at Polygon were definitely unionized, yes. I'd
Okay,
say that,
all
yes.
right.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't inherently mean that, but at minimum, it did
In
mean
this
this
case,
in
it
this
did.
case, yes. And obviously, we would encourage anyone still a company, any company, but especially games media, to unionize. But I mean, in general, it's been a really bad time for the games media. I think partly, and I'm sorry to say this, but in many ways, this is your fault, Sophie.
Mm.
As a
Fuck's sake, Sophie.
as a
Mm.
We talked about this.
as a
Yeah.
creator, a streamer, you are, I'm going to say, mainly responsible personally
Yeah.
for the
It
fall
was
of
Alex
games
and I.
media.
Alex and I would never talk
We'd
about
never,
games for free.
yeah, we'd never
Uh,
do that. Podcasters are a different breed. They're
That's
better. No
fine.
one complains about it. No, genuinely, we're all probably a little bit to blame. I mean, not really, but the rise of alternative media in the form of podcasters, in form of streamers, in the form of YouTubers, has had a big effect on these websites. Effectively, the websites from the perspective of video game companies exist to be promotional vehicles. They to have adverts and to promote games on them that are coming out and so on. The downside is they might do reviews and negatively talk about a game, and also they might have news stories that the games media, the games industry don't particularly want reported. So, if the fact they've been able to find different avenues to promote games, there are a lot of streamers. Obviously, I'm sure Sophie would not be in this, but who would gladly take money to talk about how great a game is. They don't need to be, they don't have any kind of level of ethics or journalistic ethics or even
Mm.
a knowledge that they should have. It's not even I'm not saying they're necessarily being, cackling villains about it. They just, I'm just a guy who talks about stuff on
Mm.
in a camera. I just talk about what I like. Why not just take some money to talk about this game and say complimentarily? I'm not even really a gaming stream, but if someone wants me to talk about it, sure, I'll talk about it. Even outside of direct kind of payments or something like that, it's a lot easier. A lot of these people, they're young guys or women. They're naive. They don't know how these things work. So yeah, they can easily be whooshed off to a junket or something and wined and dined, and suddenly they really like the games. Now, I mean, frankly, the games media has a long history of doing that kind of stuff too. Back in the heydays of the 90s, there were all these stories of like game magazines getting chucked on a plane to Tahiti to go play a video game there or something. But the fact that they have these kind of much more fragmented market, they don't have any kind of infrastructure even around them to kind of teach. They don't have like an elder journalist there who's been working there for a while to show them the ropes or even anything, even on that level. So it really is a worry that, especially while there's a lot of decent kind of game criticism, especially news gathering, there's increasingly going to be very few outlets to do that, especially when, if you want to say to do some quite incendiary news, you need like a legal team to basically back you up, because if a company wants to shut you up, even if everything you said is 100% accurate, they've got ways of doing that if you don't have your own proper legal representation. And like small outfits of like 1 or 2 guys, they can't afford that. So yeah, it's not a great situation, and it's a situation that definitely benefits, the big companies far more than anyone, which is unfortunately a pretty common situation these days. Yeah. So that's the new implosion in games media. But for more bad news, let's hear from Sophie.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's bad news, but it's not as significant, I think. Well, not for me anyways, because so the first thing I guess I'm going to talk very briefly about basically is just that the Xbox, I guess Microsoft is raising prices on Xbox, basically kicking in yesterday, May 1st, which like also then affects an increase in prices of Xbox games as well, which like I almost feel like the timing is very interesting on this, just that obviously I don't know, I wonder if it's kind of a little, I mean obviously they've been planning it for a while, but it is a bit convenient as well given the boycott. And then also I've also noticed that there's a massive like Xbox sale going on Steam at the moment, and I
really?
was just like, this feels significant that all of this stuff is happening at this time, but maybe it's because of the increase in prices as well.
Just to remind our listeners, who I'm sure listen to every single episode religiously and would never skip one, but last week we talked about how Microsoft has been made a priority target of the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, and what's the S stand
Sanction.
for again? Sanctions
Sanction.
against Israel for the genocide in Palestine. Yeah, so
So I do kind of
that's
wonder
something
about
to
the
take in.
timing there.
Yeah.
I'd also say
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
that I feel like there's a tendency. I feel like there's the habit that companies get into of like when there's a widely accepted reason why prices might go up,
Yeah, they
Yeah.
just
then they
do
raise
it.
their prices
Yeah.
way more than is necessary. So I wonder if the tariff stuff has provided cover for Xbox to increase their prices.
I think
that-
And
that's
also I
definitely the
wonder
case,
how
yeah.
this fits in with the Switch 2 controversy about how expensive those games are.
Yeah.
So it feels like there's a lot of things which might make it quite appealing.
I think
for
basically,
Xbox
yeah, I
to,
think
up
often
the
we see
prices.
industries just all kind of raise prices all at the same time. Is because obviously everyone can do it. It's the same as like grocery stores do it as well.
Yeah,
So
I
guess,
would say that like the Switch 2, the big thing in America, which we discussed when we did our big Switch 2 discussion, was that that the new Mario Kart game is going to be
Episode 7.
yeah, it's going to be $80, and that was like a new high in America for games. And I believe the announcement, the Xbox, is that there are going to be now at least some games at $80 from
yeah,
Xbox.
I was gonna get to that. Yeah, so
Oh, yeah,
basically the
sorry.
games are based. No, it's okay. So the games are basically some of the games are going to increase to $80 basically. The lineup of some games that might include like Call of Duty, the new Fable, Perfect Dark reboot, Clockwork Revolution, Rare's Everwild, etc., Gears of War, these kind of games. And I guess like it seems like most of the consoles and the sort of accompanying devices, it feels like, I mean, yeah, a lot of the consoles in particular have look like they're going up for like $100. And I think it's also worth mentioning that I think 2023 the Xbox Series had a raise in price basically in most countries.
Yeah.
But the Xbox in the US in particular hasn't had a price raise in like a very long time, a price rise in a very long time. I think potentially since 2020. So, and it's going up quite a bit. So like the Xbox Series S512 is going up from 379 to is up 379 from 299. Xbox Series 1 terabyte is going up $429 from $349. So I feel like almost $100 increase on a lot of the
those are
consoles.
dollars. I think it's like a £50 increase in the UK.
Yeah. The statement, they're kind of vague, as most price increases are. I think you're right. It's basically just everyone's increasing their prices, so they absolutely can as well. And they basically said, like, their statement was basically like, oh, it's really challenging, but, we have to look at market conditions, amorphous reason as to why they're increasing prices. So, yeah.
I believe that they haven't announced, or they've at least been vague about a price increase for games in the UK. I think there's a chance they may not do that because the Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart World, the new Mario Kart on Switch 2, that caused the kerfuffle in America, that was a relatively reasonable price. I mean, it's still expensive, but it's like in line with all the other big expensive games these days. in the UK, so maybe they're not raising game prices here. I mean, I guess it's fingers crossed. Although, of course, because they're under BDS, we would recommend that you do not buy them anyway.
Mm.
But it's important for where other game prices and stuff might be going.
Yeah, yeah. The second thing I wanted to talk about very briefly again is also GTA 6 has been delayed to May 2026, which obviously people are disappointed by. They don't really cite any specific reasons. They say the interest and excitement surrounding new Grand Theft Auto has been truly humbling for our entire team. Want to thank you for the support. Basically, we want to be able to deliver a good experience, so we're going to delay it. So probably usual delay crunch reasons, I imagine. Is responsible.
I actually, this is inside knowledge. This is deep cover stuff. But I actually met a guy at a party about a week ago.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you weren't finished.
It doesn't happen often, but I did talk to someone at a party. Usually I just stand in the corner, facing the corner for like 4 hours. But
That's
this
me.
time I talked to someone, and apparently he said that his I think his girlfriend works at Rockstar, or he knew someone at Rockstar anyway, and he said like, yes, it was definitely going to get delayed. And I don't know, random guy I met at a party, vindicated. So,
He was right.
who knows?
Say that, haters.
Yeah, exactly. You bet.
Yeah, so
We were
basically
doubting you.
we were doubting you, but here you go. Yeah, so basically, obviously, I think it's probably not entirely. I mean, there's so many games, obviously, that get delayed for similar reasons. I guess interestingly as well is that a lot of games were slated for release around the time that Grand Theft Auto was slated for release, so they're probably quite, relaxed to have a bit more of breathing room around that release date. Because apparently other industries or other studios and publishers have basically been pushing their games or rushing their games to avoid clashing with the GTA timeline, and now maybe have to sort of reckon with that again, and maybe are a bit pissed about that process. So that is sort of interesting in the way that like GTA is obviously such a massive game, and its release really does have this massive impact on all the other publishers in the industry. I myself, I did play a lot of GTA as a child. I've never played it as an adult. I don't really have that much interest in it anymore. So I don't really care, obviously, but like I appreciate obviously the significance of it just being such a massive game in the industry, and also just being an indicator that the game industry it's not a healthy one.
No.
It's not a healthy one, and this is definitely probably going. I feel like we're going to have a couple of exposés in a year or so about the crunch process during GTA 6, because I'm sure that's happening as we speak.
I'm sure everyone already knows this, but isn't it the case that GTA 5 is the single most financially successful entertainment product
I think
in
you're
human
right.
history?
Yeah, I think
Possibly,
you're
it
right.
wouldn't surprise me. I don't think it's sold as many as like Minecraft,
I think, is the
but
top.
that's like the number one game. But it wouldn't surprise me if GTA is more financially successful.
Yeah, they've got all that stuff in game that you can make money with, right? On the online stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, it's more expensive as a product anyway than Minecraft.
Yeah, but I'm not sure. But I have heard that basically, the last game Rockstar made was Red Dead Redemption 2. And when that came out, there was a whole controversy because it's either Sam or Dan Houser. I can never remember which one of them it is. They were brothers. And one of them left, and one of them is like still the main number one GTA guy. They were basically boasting about how hard they work. Yeah, it's like 100-hour weeks, man. We just love working so much. Yeah, it's incredible. And they got in a lot of hassle for that, rightly, so to put it mildly. I think there was an implication that things might get a bit better there. But I know some people who are involved in efforts to try and organize the Rockstar workers, and from what I've heard, no, things have not got better. It is still very bad there. And the real tragedy is that by extending this out by a year, it's basically 1 year away from like the end of the month, over a year, this game will be coming out ostensibly. That basically means that a huge number of people are probably going to be in, I mean, maybe not permanent, but extensive crunch for a whole year to get it finished, which is the real tragedy.
Oh, an extra year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that sucks.
On to something maybe a bit more lighthearted, a bit more fun.
Yeah.
Also, more dystopian. It's funny how those two things combine sometimes, but it does in this case.
I thought I'd give us something a little bit of dessert at the end of this podcast to thank you for getting through all the sad news. Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, the main the main news that happened since we last recorded was the Oblivion remaster thing. I'd seen multiple leaks about that, so like I guess I wasn't completely surprised, but I still was quite surprised.
I was shocked,
But
I'll be honest. I didn't know about the
yeah, I
leaks.
mean,
I
I
was
saw so
just
many
like,
leaks
what?
about it, but I didn't really believe it. And then it happened, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess all those leaks were true. That's weird. Normally they're bullshit. But as we've discussed, Bethesda, owned by Microsoft, who are a target of BDS. So I've not played the remaster, and we're not going to be covering the remaster or the news around it today. Microsoft may well be the most complicit tech company with the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
So fuck that. Instead, I wanted to talk about what happens when video games come true. What if I told you that I had heard a story about a libertarian millionaire who lived underwater? But no, said the man from England. This isn't Andrew Ryan from BioShock. This is Rudiger Koch, who spent 120 days living underwater in his stationary sea pod, Alpha Deep. Since our last episode, the New York Times has put out an article on this guy called "The Techno-Utopians Who Want to Colonize the Sea." And he's broken the world record for living underwater, and he did it off the coast of Panama, so in the Caribbean. Apparently, this seapod organization was founded by Rutger Koch, who used to work as an aeronautical engineer and is heavily invested in Bitcoin, along with a guy called Chad Alwotsky, who is a big Bitcoin guy, and Grant Romont, who's a Canadian tech entrepreneur on a, quote, anti-aging health span journey, end quote. So
he's on a
pretty
journey.
much exactly.
What was his name?
He's on a journey. Grant Romont. I'm not. That might not be how you pronounce it, but I'm sure he'll get over it. He's gone on a journey.
Yeah, he's gonna live forever. So
yeah. So these guys met.
Grim.
To throw some more of that kind of stuff in there, they met through something called the Seasteading Institute, which was an organization co-founded with funding from Peter Thiel.
Yeah.
So
lovely.
it's a regular cavalcade
libertarians just love seasteading,
they
man.
love it.
They love it.
They love it.
They love it.
And to give you some more information on what the Seasteading Institute is about, an Australian professor of sustainability, Peterman, in that same article, described their vision as, quote, an apartheid of the worst kind, where the rich sneer at the rest of the world, end quote, from the safety of their sea homes.
What a good description.
So it sounds great.
Yeah, it sounds lovely.
So Koch seems to disagree with this interpretation, however. He says, this, quote, this can be a reality for all of us. Of course it's not an elitist, this is the end of the quote now. Of course it's not this elitist escape project. It's for the people.
Of course.
On a completely unrelated aside, this future reality for all of us costs $6 million per pod. And the dream of the organization, what they yearn for, is to get it down to the very, very affordable 1.2 million.
Yeah, okay, that
So
makes
truly
it. I can do that.
Firmly in the reach
Yeah,
of the masses.
Yeah, I can do that.
The other bizarre thing about this story is the allegation that this Koch guy had paid a hitman $500,000 worth of crypto to assassinate a Thai naval officer. What the fuck?
Why would you?
Koch,
Okay, also, secondly, why would you? I mean, I understand why crypto is used for like dark payments like this, but also, like, I wouldn't accept crypto for an assassination. I wouldn't accept that. I don't think I would accept that.
What
as
would
a
you
valid
accept
currency.
for an assassination,
Cash.
Sophie?
Yeah.
So
Give
Koch,
us cold hard cash.
Give us the address of your website. I wanna...
Koch allegedly
SophieKills.com.
blamed a Thai naval officer for having impounded an earlier version of these sea settlement things
That's crazy.
that he'd had off the coast of Thailand. Now, obviously, Koch denies that this happened. Koch describes the hitman as, quote, just a disgruntled contractor.
Wow.
Quote. But the alleged hitman, speaking to the New York Times, said that Koch was a, quote, dangerous and unstable individual. Quote, he never hired me as a hitman, but if he claims he never expected me to act in such a capacity, he is lying, end quote. So I'm not quite sure what that means, but
What the
it
fuck?
sounds like he was hired as a hitman.
Look,
But
if I
don't know.
hypothetically worked as a hitman,
Were.
if I
It might have been for
hypothetically
him.
did that, if he understood my business to be murdering people because I was paid money to do so, even though I'm not a hitman, that is what I was gonna do.
he just gave me all this crypto to like just be pals,
Just to be pals.
and then
Yeah.
suggested that there was this guy he wanted killed.
Yeah.
you
And
know,
then
maybe he's got a serious nut allergy, and I was going to offer him a nut. I don't know. Who can say?
Who could say?
Um, yeah. So I just felt I read this. I felt like I had to share it. I mean, I know it's not strictly video game related, but this didn't turn out very well in BioShock. Is all I'm going to say. That's not a spoiler for that game. You see that quite soon.
What I find interesting about
I'm
it.
sure.
Sorry,
Go
go
on.
ahead. What I find interesting about it is that it's under the water. Because my understanding of
But
most
they're on top,
seasteading is that it's just been like, basically building a platform that they can then put things on out in the sea somewhere.
Yes. So this is the platform that you can put things on above,
Yeah.
and then underneath is the pod under which he stayed in for 120 days.
I see.
And that's the new element. So it's sort of both.
But like the point in BioShock, the point of it being underwater was like to have a secret city that no one knew about. Because in the original, Atlas Shrugged, the whole thing is that all the rich industrialists of the world go to their secret valley called Galt's Gulch. Saying this out loud is actually quite difficult.
Gulch?
Now that I'm
Is it?
saying it, it's Galt's Gulch.
I read that book a
Did
couple
you?
of years
Jesus
ago.
Christ.
Jesus Christ, it's long.
I am never going to read that book.
Nothing
I was just
happens.
like,
Nothing happens in that book.
a lot of stuff about trains, from my understanding.
Yeah, there's some
Yeah.
trains. I think they have sex quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll check it out.
Anyway, although it didn't go that well in BioShock, I'm sure we can trust this crypto-loving, alleged hitman hiring multimillionaire, and I'm sure he really does see this $6 million seapod as the future for us all. But that said, he did hire an armed guard to protect him throughout the 120 days. He also hired a cleaner to come in daily because I guess he just didn't have any time to do cleaning himself while locked in a room doing presumably very little for 120 days. So perhaps the reality is that he sees our future as us cleaning for him and protecting him. That's probably a more realistic vision of what he thinks the future's going to look like. So yeah, lucky us.
My prediction is that security guard becomes the Baron of the Seastead.
Could be.
But then that's just another person rising to
I-
power.
I-
and
I'm not
being
saying
just
it-
as bad as the previous one.
I'm just like that.
What is this, Cult of the Lamb?
That's
Yeah.
like the hole in all of these billionaire like secret
Yeah,
enclave
yeah.
shit. Is that like, of course we're gonna have
What's
a
stopping them from
pay-
murdering you?
yeah,
What's
we're
stopping
going
them
to pay
from
people
mutiny?
to protect us, and it's like, well, in the end of the world or whatever, those people who quote unquote protect you are the guys with the guns, and oh look, they're in charge.
Yeah. So yeah, with that said, the question that was on my mind, guys, is what other video games do you predict will come true in the next few years?
Well, before other games, I was just about to say, in BioShock, the point of it being underwater was to keep it secret, to like for it to be, away from the world. The people wouldn't know it was there, apart from that one lighthouse, right? But like everyone knows about this place. It's publicly known. It's in the newspaper, and it's got an entire seastead thing above it. So I don't really see any point for it to be underwater. Why would you want to do this underwater? Why would you want to live underwater for no real reason? I don't really get it. Maybe you can explain that.
It doesn't
to me.
sound very
Explain
appealing.
that. Tell me.
I don't know.
Tell me why you did it.
I mean, I can understand the seasteading as an escape
Yeah.
from a world that they're flooding. But yeah, the underwater bit is a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just sort of like for bragging rights.
Just as like a bookish recommendation as well. If you're interested in the idea of like billionaires building bunkers and seasteading and stuff, a book called Survival of the Richest: Escape Fantasies of the Tech Billionaires by Douglas Rushkoff is really good on this topic, basically discussing the sort of flaws in logic as well as just like the extravagance of billionaires planning doomsday bunkers and other such escapes from apocalypse.
From the apocalypse that they
The
caused.
apocalypse that they made. Yeah.
But in terms of games coming true, I mean, I think it sounded like you were on the verge of making Cult of the Lamb pretty accurate, Ed.
You know?
pretty
Cult of the
real.
Lamb,
Yeah.
Fallout.
Take out those bishops. Take out those bishops.
You know?
Yeah, could do. And do you guys want to join a cult? I'll
Yeah,
be
go
a
on
very
then.
nice cult leader.
If it's cute and charming, I will.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, we'll make it as cute and charming as you
What
want.
are the
I mean, I guess
options
the
to
games that
coup
we
you
talked
in the cult? What's the options there?
Not much in terms of cooing, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Well, says you.
Yeah. But you guys wouldn't betray me, would you?
No.
Come on. I guess of all the games we spoke about in this podcast, I guess if this wasn't the podcast, it could have just been in our chat. But I guess Cyberpunk 2077,
Yeah.
unfortunately, feels like one of the
Exactly.
most likely to be true in the next few years, doesn't it?
We're gonna have to call each other Tunes. We've
I really
got
don't
no
wanna do
choice.
that. That's going to be the least.
Let's
That's
not.
going to be the worst part of Cyberpunk coming true is that we all have to call each other Tunes.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
really don't want to do that.
I guess I'd prefer it if Terra Nil came true. That seemed quite cute.
Yeah, let's do
Zelda-punky
Terra
vibes.
Nil.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
do Terra
Let's
Nil.
do that instead.
Yeah.
Let's do Terra Nil.
Maybe we can do Cyberpunk 2077 and that society will collapse, and then we'll
then
do
we do
Terra
Terra
Nil
Nil.
maybe a
Yes.
century after
Wow, an
Yes.
accelerationist.
that. Well, yeah, that's not my preferred route, but
It's
it
a
does
route.
increasingly look like it's
It's
the
a
one we're
route.
getting,
It's a
whether we
route.
like it or not.
yeah.
Oh.
What about you guys? What's going to come true? What video games are going to come true?
I'm going to be. Maybe I'll be optimistic and say Terra Nil. Yeah, I'll be optimistic and say Terra Nil. If I'm thinking realistic, I do think probably. I think Cyberpunk. There is just sort of stuff that happens more and more, and just I feel like Elon Musk's vision of the future in particular feels very cyberpunk coded. Yeah.
Spoilers, I think Outer Wilds. The sun's going to explode.
Right. Don't worry, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Spoilers
did
for
not.
everyone else. Spoilers for everyone who's played it for less than 20 minutes.
It took me a while to actually put
quite a
that. It
long-term
actually took me a while to
projection.
piece it together because the first time it happened, I went through a black hole, and then I
I
died.
had the same
So
thing.
I
had
thought-
the same thing.
I thought when I went through the black hole, I went forward in time, and I was going to a version of the future where the sun exploded, and then I died inexplicably in the middle of the game in another one. I was like, "Oh, it's the sun. Oh, it's
Yeah,
always like that."
I actually saw that on stream, and I was like,
Yeah.
how is she still thinking it's this type of time travel?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's because
But it's understandable, yeah,
I had a
doesn't-
good
it's not
reason
like
to
it
think so.
explains it
It's because it was just a weird coincidence of events, basically.
I think a lot of people, maybe it happened to me, I can't remember. I think I've seen a lot of people if you just don't look at the sun when it explodes, you just appear to just die.
No, yeah,
You have no idea what happened.
yeah, and I happened to be looking at the sun when it exploded, but only because I took a black hole
Yeah,
outside to be
yeah.
literally, and it just the timing just so perfectly lined up
Oh,
that
I
it
see.
exploded
Makes
shortly
sense,
after I arrived, after I did the black hole. So I thought one caused the other, but in this case, it was not causation, dear listener. It was correlation.
A lesson for us all.
So in conclusion, we're going to have Cyberpunk 2077.
Yes,
Then we're going to have Terra Nil.
yes.
And then a very, very long time
Outer
after that, we're
Wilds.
going to have Outer Wilds. So plenty to stay tuned for.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Exciting stuff.
We might
Keep
be
your
up.
ears glued to this
We
frequency.
might be up to like episode 15 by the time the sun explodes. So
Yeah, we might be. I think that's all I've got on the BioShock story. That might be all we've got on this podcast, guys. Is that right?
It might be, yeah.
I think it is. I
My
think it is.
God.
I think we're done. You, dear listener, are soon to be freed from our clutches. Not glutches. That's not even a word. Clutches.
I will say, dear listener, that you're my favorite one.
Oh, yeah.
The one that's listening to
You?
it now, you're my favorite.
Right there, you.
Yeah,
yeah,
you.
you.
You're my
Who's
favorite.
like doing
of
the
this list.
dishes right now? You're my favorite.
The person who listened
Mm.
to this podcast immediately after you, they're the one we hate. We hate that guy.
We hate them. We hate
They're
them.
like,
We really wish
I
they'd
mean,
stop.
We take they come on our statistics and we're like, great, you got another one.
We'll
But,
take
like,
the
that
listen,
guy,
but we don't.
absolutely,
We
we'd
don't
rather
want
we'd rather they weren't here.
it.
But that's not you. You're the good one.
You're the good
Yeah,
one.
It's the dark side of parasocial, folks.
So thanks for listening.
But yes, we
Mm.
are going to be finishing up. And so we have to get on to the credits. I am Alex Dean, at Alex Dean on Twitter, ALEXDUIN. On Blue Sky, it's at Alex Dean, ALEXDUIN.bsky.social. Sophie, where can people find you?
You can find me. I stream on Twitch 4 days a week. Twitch.tv/SoFreely. SOFREELY.
Which 4 days do you stream?
Which 4 days? On Thursdays, Fridays, Sundays, and Mondays.
Wow.
From 1 p.m. English time.
Great.
BST is what we're currently in.
Yes, that's true. Not even GMT. We're in the crazy time.
Yeah.
Ed, what about you? Where can people harass you, intimidate you, stalk you on the internet?
Yeah, you can find me on X at Still Not a Lemon, and you can find me on Blue Sky at Not a Lemon. So I look forward to engaging with you there, everyone.
Engage in your correspondence with Ed.
Yeah.
However, more important than any of us are the collective will of the Red Bowers podcast, and you can find that at Red Bowers Pod on Twitter. at redbarrelspodcast.bsky.social. We've said it before. If you do not follow us on those platforms and share our content, you are a coward. We all know it. You know it in your heart. Sorry, I started getting a bit genuinely aggro there.
Just take a breath there, Alex.
Take a breath.
deep
I'm just
breath.
so angry that people aren't
Cool
sharing
down,
on the
Alex.
internet.
Cool down, Alex.
However,
This
well,
listener
you know,
will, but it's the one after that you need
This
to
one
look
after,
out
don't
for.
worry about.
you know what will calm me down? It'll be our wonderful music from Brilliant Drink. As always, again, we have not recorded at the Mayday Rooms. I'm sure we will at future, but we still love them, so we thank them.
Thanks, guys.
And again, please share us on all the socials and also review us on Spotify and iTunes. You know what? I'm not going to tell you that we're a 5-star podcast, but just follow your heart. I think we'll come to the right conclusion. But that is going to be it for now. So I'm going to say goodbye to all of you, and my comrades are going to say
Bye.